You're back for more, aren't you? I have to question your sanity or mine for continuing this wild ride. But here we are, so buckle up. There I was on my couch, armed with my phone, on a quest to find a local sword-fighting class. Because let's face it, my time travels had more blades than a cutlery set, and I was about as skilled with a sword as a penguin with a chainsaw. Just as I found a class called Swashbuckling 101, my gut gave me that all-too-familiar gurgle. Adventure time. I gently moved Pharaoh off my lap. He gave me a look like I'd just canceled his favorite show. I dashed to the bathroom, ready for another historical plunge. I'm perched on my porcelain throne, bracing for the time warp, when Pharaoh, in a move of feline betrayal, decides my lap is the place to be. I scoop up Pharaoh, ready to place him safely aside. I mean, who knows what happens to a cat on a time-traveling lap, right? But before I can figure out the potential feline space-time continuum consequences, I start my journey, everything spins, and he leaps back onto my lap, and whoosh! We're not in my bathroom anymore. Welcome to the Battle of Waterloo. And as usual, I'm as naked as a mole rat at a nudist beach. Imagine my surprise when realizing I landed smack in the middle of Waterloo, and Pharaoh's still with me. I'm standing there, stark naked, with my cat looking as shocked as I am. Great, I think. Now I've got a time-traveling cat companion. Pharaoh just sits there, judging me with his kitty eyes, probably wondering why he didn't choose a more normal human. Typical, right? Nope. We've landed smack in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars, right before Waterloo. Pharaoh, that furry little traitor, gives me this not-my-problem look and dashes off. There I am in the buff, dodging soldiers and cannon fire, thinking, this isn't how I plan my evening. I mean, talk about a historical faux pas. So picture this. Me, bare as a newborn, tiptoeing through a battlefield, chasing after my cat. It's like a game of the world's worst hide-and-seek. I'm trying to keep a low profile, but let's face it, a naked guy in the middle of Waterloo sticks out like a sore thumb. It's chaos and comedy rolled into one. Every time I get close, Pharaoh darts away, as if he's enjoying the world's most dangerous game of tag. And me? I'm just praying I don't end up a historical footnote as that naked guy at Waterloo. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I stumble upon a group of British soldiers. You should have seen their faces. They're staring at me like I'm some sort of ghost, or worse, a French spy. And there I am, trying to cover up with my hands, babbling about my cat. I doubt I'm just looking for my cat is a valid excuse in Napoleonic France, especially in the buff. In the midst of this, Pharaoh decides to play hero or villain, depending on how you look at it. He leaps onto a cannon, causing a soldier to misfire. Chaos ensues, and in the confusion, I seize my chance. Grabbing a conveniently placed flag, I wrap it around myself. Finally, some dignity. As I make my mad dash to retrieve Pharaoh, I can't help but think how this is going to be one heck of a story to tell. If only they had cameras back then. Naked guy saves the day, or at least his dignity, at Waterloo. That'd make the history books for sure. As I'm chasing after Pharaoh across the battlefield, a thought hits me. Why did I even get a cat? I mean, before my little Egyptian escapade, I wasn't a cat person. But there I was, in the middle of the Battle of Waterloo, worried sick about a cat who'd probably just been using me for food and a warm place to sleep. It's funny, really, how life works. One minute you're catless, and the next, you're darting through history with a feline sidekick. And why is it always the crazy events? Mongolia, pirate battles, and now Waterloo. Couldn't I just land in a nice, peaceful moment for once? Like, I don't know, a Renaissance fair or something. But nope, here we are, dodging musket balls and cavalry, all to find a cat who probably doesn't even realize the historical significance of where he's scampering around. Oh well, that's life. Or at least, that's my life. Time-traveling Turd Yssey with a cat in tow. Just your average bathroom break. I finally catch up to Pharaoh, who's now perched atop a barrel, looking as regal as a little furry Napoleon himself. I scoop him up, just as the world around us erupts in what I guess is the escalation of the actual battle. Time to make a swift exit. Stage left. As I'm making my escape, I run into this British soldier who looks at me, then at Pharaoh, and bursts out laughing. "Only in war, mate," he says, shaking his head. I couldn't agree more. All right, so there I was with Pharaoh, ready to head back, when I realize something's off. The air feels different, and that's when it hits me. I can't go back yet. Why? Because whatever causes my time-traveling bowels seems to insist that I ensure my ancestors meet, and, well, do their thing, or I might not make it back to the present as, you know, me. After a whole day of chasing Pharaoh around, I finally took a moment to look at my surroundings. Soldiers, cannons, the whole historical shebang, but none of them gave me that special rumble in my bowels, signaling they were my ancestor. This was going to be trickier than I thought. Thinking on my feet, which, let's be honest, is a skill I've had to develop, I decided to play detective in the middle of a war zone. With Pharaoh in tow, I began mingling with the soldiers, trying to pick up on any familiar family traits. It's a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is a battlefield, and the needle is, well, potentially responsible for my existence. As I'm weaving through the crowds, dodging the occasional stray cannonball, I'm also trying to keep Pharaoh from causing more historical havoc. You'd think a cat would be more out of place in 1815, but Pharaoh seemed to blend in better than I did wrapped in the Union Jack. Just when I was about to give up hope, I overheard a conversation. The accent, the mannerisms, something clicked. Could it be? Was this the moment I was waiting for? The rumble in my bowels seemed to agree. Time to play matchmaker. Charlie style. Making contact with the soldier who I was pretty sure was my many times great-grandfather was only half the battle. Finding my many times great-grandmother? That was turning into a real saga. Over the next week, I somehow ended up in a British uniform. Don't ask how. It's a long story. Keeping Pharaoh out of the war was a full-time job. That cat had a nose for trouble. Every day I donned my ill-fitting British uniform, keeping one eye on my would-be great-grandfather and the other on Pharaoh, who seemed to have a talent for sneaking into the most inconvenient places. As the days trudged on, my mission to find my many times great-grandmother felt more like trying to find a Wi-Fi signal in the Stone Age. There I was, strolling through camps and over battlefields, half expecting to bump into someone holding a sign that read, "Charlie's future relative here." Meanwhile, keeping Pharaoh from enlisting himself in the British Army was a job in itself. The cat was on a quest to get knighted or something. It was a daily circus, juggling my way through history, keeping an eye on what I hoped was a branch of my family tree, all while making sure my feline companion didn't rewrite the history books. There I was in the middle of a battlefield, with Pharaoh strapped to my back like some sort of ninja cat. Just as I'm trying to keep a low profile, my ancestor gets hit by a musket ball. Great timing, right? So I'm dodging death left and right thinking, this is how I go out. Not with a bang, but a whimper, in a ridiculous historical blunder. As I reach my ancestor, 2 French soldiers appear, rifles at the ready. Well, this is just perfect, I think. I'm about to be a casualty in a history book I never read. But then, Pharaoh, in a stroke of feline madness, bursts from the pack. He launches at the soldiers like a fluffy missile, causing such a ruckus that they momentarily forget they're holding guns. In the ensuing chaos, I grab my ancestor and we make a wild dash to safety, all thanks to Pharaoh, the unlikely hero of Waterloo. Who knew a cat could have such impeccable timing? So there we were, me and my musket-wounded ancestor, making a hasty retreat thanks to Pharaoh's unexpected heroics. As we hobbled away, I couldn't help but think about the absurdity of the situation. There I was, a time traveler in a historical battle, saved by a cat who probably thought he was just chasing a particularly noisy mouse. We found a somewhat safe spot, and I tended to my ancestor's wound as best as I could. Pharaoh, meanwhile, seemed quite pleased with himself, purring as if he hadn't just single-handedly altered a moment in the Napoleonic Wars. As I hauled my ancestor to what was optimistically called a medical area in 1815, I braced myself for more historical hijinks. Then, as a nurse approached us, my gut did its now familiar time travel tango. Bingo, she was the missing link in my family tree. While she fussed over my ancestor, a light bulb went off in my head. Maybe I should start researching my family tree. You know, to avoid future incidents of near death by history. Charlie, old boy, I muttered to myself, welcome to your new hobby. Because apparently, regular hobbies are for people who don't time travel with their cats. There I was in the make-do 1815 medical tent, realizing the nurse fussing over my possibly great-something grandfather was another branch of my wild family tree. The irony wasn't lost on me. Note to future self, I mused. Before your next bathroom time hop, maybe do a tad of genealogy. Beats playing Guess Who with historical figures. The absurdity of my situation was almost comical. Who needs to scroll through ancestry databases when your bathroom trips throw you into family reunions in the past? I mean, most people have awkward family dinners, but me? I get musket balls and battlefield surgery. Talk about taking knowing your roots to a whole new level. Standing in the makeshift medical tent, I suddenly realized something crucial was missing. The familiar, gut-wrenching sensation that signaled it was time to return to the present. My stomach was as calm as a lazy Sunday afternoon, and looking at her belly, there was not a glow in sight. This was new, and not in a good way. Meanwhile, Pharaoh was growing increasingly restless in my arms, probably missing his usual spot on the couch. I held onto him tightly, trying to appear calm. But internally, I was a cocktail of concern and confusion. How do we get back if my time-traveling bowels decides to take a day off? I wondered. Just when you think you've got the hang of this time travel thing, the universe throws you a curveball. As my ancestor gave Pharaoh a hero's pat, the nurse, aka another link in my bizarre family chain, began smiling at the wounded soldier, reminiscing about her cat and how much she adored cat-loving men. Typical, right? Just then, her belly started to glow. Ah, the time travel bat signal, I thought. My own stomach did its now familiar flip, signaling it was time to skedaddle. Quick as a cat, pun intended. I grabbed Pharaoh and mumbled something about an urgent appointment with fresh air. Off I dashed, looking for the nearest private spot to make our grand exit. The art of leaving a historical scene, I've learned, is all about timing and a good excuse. Crouched behind those oh-so-conveniently placed kegs of gunpowder, I had a moment of clarity. Really, universe? A cannonball and explosive kegs? Could this day get any more cliché? The cannonball grew larger in the sky, like some sort of comically oversized hailstone. I clutched Pharaoh, who gave me a look that said, "This is not what I signed up for." Bracing for a grand, explosive finale, I closed my eyes tight. But instead of a boom, we were enveloped in the familiar whoosh. The next thing I knew, we were back in the bathroom, safe and sound, albeit a bit more frazzled. Pharaoh let out an indignant meow, probably cursing his 9 lives, while I finally managed to attend to nature's call. Well, that was one for the history books, I chuckled, relief washing over me. Literally. There we were, back in the 21st century, in the familiar confines of my bathroom. Pharaoh, disheveled and clearly questioning his life choices, shot me a glare that could curdle milk. "I know, buddy," I said, patting his head. "No more historical excursions for you." But as I sat there, still reeling from the near miss with the gunpowder kegs, I couldn't help but let out a laugh. Who else can say they've been chased by cannonballs and saved by a cat in the Battle of Waterloo? Just another day in my absurdly unconventional life. Right, so there I was, washing my hands while entertaining the notion of taking Samantha on a time travel adventure. Sure, she knows about my, unique method of time travel, but the idea of actually bringing her along? That's sitcom-level comedy waiting to happen. Picture this. Me, trying to be all romantic. "Hey, Samantha, how about we take a trip back to the Renaissance?" And her, knowing full well it involves me, a toilet, and a potentially explosive bowel movement. I mean, it's one thing to tell your girlfriend you have time-traveling capabilities through your digestive system. It's another to invite her to join the experience. Hey, babe, fancy a historically accurate date? Just ignore the fact that it starts in our bathroom. Yeah, that's going to go down in the annals of great romantic gestures, right next to serenading outside windows and getting stranded in the past because you ate the wrong thing for lunch. As I stood there, chuckling at the thought of a bathroom time travel date with Samantha, I realized the absurdity of my life had reached new heights. Who else could claim such bizarre adventures? From dodging cannonballs to matchmaking ancestors, and now contemplating a romantic jaunt through time in the least romantic way imaginable. Stay tuned, folks, I mused, glancing at Pharaoh, who seemed to have recovered his composure. Because Charlie's historical mishaps are far from over. Next time, maybe Samantha and I will take that plunge into history, toilet and all. Or perhaps Pharaoh and I will find ourselves in another unexpected era. Who knows? In this time-traveling saga, anything's possible, just hopefully with a bit more clothing next time. With that, I left the bathroom, my mind buzzing with possibilities and the comical potential of each. The adventures of Charlie, Pharaoh, and possibly Samantha were just getting started. Stay tuned for more bathroom breaks into history. And so, with a heart full of adventure and a slightly traumatized cat, we close yet another chapter of Charlie's time-traveling escapades. Will Samantha join us on a historical rendezvous? Will Pharaoh ever forgive me for the cannonball incident? Stay tuned for more toilet time travel, because in my life, history is just a flush away. Catch you in the next chapter, where the past is only a meal away. Hello, my devoted and slightly weird followers of these Turd Ysseys. Here's your unreliable narrator Charlie once again at your service. Buckle up, because today's tale from the time-traveling toilet time is a real doozy. I mean, who else but yours truly would find themselves in a historic mess after a questionable shrimp purchase? It's like my life's become a series of don't do this examples. So, grab your snacks, preferably not from a gas station, and let's dive into another absurd adventure where history, hilarity, and questionable seafood choices collide. Let me set the scene for this Turd Yssey deer enthusiast. There I am at Gasmart, the culinary crossroads of the world, where I made the executive decision to buy shrimp. Shrimp. From a gas station. My stomach clearly had more optimism than sense. Halfway to work, my gut began a rebellion that would put historical uprisings to shame. Memories of the last office bathroom incident, which could have been a plot for a disaster movie, flashed before my eyes. Fire department, hazmat suits, and colleagues' expressions of horror. Nope, not again. A U-turned so fast, I think I left my dignity spinning at the intersection. I called in sick to work. They probably think I'm battling a rare tropical disease by now. Racing home, I bolted through the door, Pharaoh in hot pursuit. But this was one adventure he'd have to miss. Personal space, buddy, I said, locking him out of the bathroom. And with that, I prepared to face the consequences of my Gasmart gourmet experience. Pharaoh, on the other side of the door, meowed his protests. Meows turned into a full-blown serenade of discontent. He scratched at the door with the determination of a cat, scorned, clearly offended by the sudden exclusion. His meows rose in pitch, a feline symphony of protest, as if to say, "Hey, I'm your time-traveling partner in crime, remember?" But desperate times called for desperate measures, and this was one historical escapade he'd have to sit out. As the world around me started to spin, I could hear Pharaoh's final, indignant meow, a fitting soundtrack to another unpredictable journey through time. But there was no turning back now. As I braced myself on my porcelain throne, I couldn't help but ruefully chuckle. Never trust gas station seafood, I thought. The walls began to blur, and I knew it was happening. Another unplanned journey through time, all thanks to my ill-advised culinary choice. Wherever, or whenever I was heading, I just hoped they appreciated a man with a strong stomach then. Bam! One second I'm in the 21st century, and the next I'm on a Roman galleon in the heat of battle, as naked as the day I was born. There I am, stark naked among a sea of armored Romans, trying to look nonchalant while internally panicking. I quickly realize that blending in is out of the question. I dodge spears and shields, trying to keep a low profile. But let's face it, a naked guy on a Roman warship sticks out like a sore thumb. I attempt to cover up with my hands, offering a weak smile to the confused and slightly amused soldiers. Meanwhile, the ship is charging towards another vessel, and the air is thick with the tension of impending battle. The Romans are bellowing orders and war cries, and I'm just trying to figure out how to survive without getting skewered or tossed overboard. In a stroke of what I can only call twisted luck, I'm mistaken for some sort of omen or divine intervention by a superstitious soldier. Suddenly, I'm being hailed as a good luck charm. Naked, but lucky. They even start asking me for battle advice. Me, the guy who gets lost navigating a supermarket, is now a makeshift naval strategist. The battle rages around me, with clashing ships and shouting warriors. I'm thrust into the role of a mascot, trying to play along while looking for any sign of that familiar time-traveling sensation. All I can think about is how much I miss Pharaoh and my comfy bathroom. Just when I think things can't get any crazier, I find myself helping to steer the ship, shouting orders I barely understand, and miraculously, we start turning the tide of battle. The Romans are cheering. I'm standing there bewildered, and all I can think is, how am I going to explain this in my memoirs? As the battle raged on, I tried to look confident, all the while praying for a miraculous return to my bathroom. In a particularly surreal moment, a Roman soldier, mistaking my bewildered expressions for battle-hardened stoicism, offered me his helmet. There I stood, the only helmet-wearing, otherwise completely naked strategist on the ship. I must have looked like a bizarre statue come to life, a sight that would have given Michelangelo a run for his money. Just as I was getting used to my new role, a seagull, probably attracted by my shiny new headgear, decided to make a landing. Right on my head. As the Romans roared with laughter, I realized this was one history lesson I'd never forget, if I ever made it back to write it. Feeling a rumble within, I thought, aha, Back to the Future. But no, just a typical stomach grumble. Perhaps from the questionable seafood from Gas Mart earlier. Gas station shrimp. The find your ancestor rule was still in play. And let me tell you, scanning a Roman galleon for relatives is like searching for a sensible diet plan at a feast. I strolled the deck, which was more of a brisk, chilly walk given my lack of clothing, and even braved the lower decks, where the only thing I found were some very unfriendly rats and a distinct lack of family members. I mused sarcastically to myself. Maybe my ancestors were playing an epic game of hide-and-seek, or maybe they just had the good sense to avoid Roman naval battles. With no ancestors in sight, it looked like I was stuck in the past, caught between a rock and a hard place, or in this case, between oars and a sword. Just as I was coming to terms with my indefinite Roman holiday, a rumble in my stomach gave me hope. Peering across the churning sea, I spotted a familiar face on a Carthaginian vessel as it rammed another Roman ship. "There you are!" I shouted, pointing excitedly. The Romans around me, mistaking my frantic pointing for tactical genius, began shouting orders to ram the Carthaginian ship. Before I knew it, the soldiers, inspired by the naked man in a helmet, were rowing like madmen, charging towards the enemy. "We're following me now?" I thought. "This is either sheer brilliance or complete madness." The collision was epic. Our galleon rammed the enemy ship, causing chaos and confusion. The Carthaginian ship began to list and sink, and the Romans around me were ecstatic, slapping me on the back, a bit awkward given my lack of clothing. They hailed me as the hero of the hour, the naked mastermind who turned the tide against Carthage. I stood there, the only person on deck not cheering, partly because I was freezing, and partly because I was trying to figure out how I accidentally became a Roman legend and possibly killed my own ancestor. Then, as the enemy commander was hauled aboard, dripping and defeated, along with my ancestor and a few other prisoners, all eyes turned to me, expecting some sort of grand victory speech. I cleared my throat, glanced around at the expectant faces, and managed, "Can someone lend me a cloak? It's a bit breezy up here." The soldiers roared with laughter, thinking it another example of my brilliant wit. Everyone's eyes were on me, the accidental hero in a helmet. I couldn't decide if I was more baffled or amused. Well, that's one for the history books, I chuckled to myself. Charlie, the naked strategist who accidentally led a Roman victory. Just as I was basking in my accidental glory, the realization hit me. I had found my ancestor and almost killed him by sinking a Carthaginian ship. Won't be telling him this story. With the battle turning in Rome's favor and the enemy ships retreating, I knew it was only a matter of time before I'd be whisked back to my own era. But for now, I stood there, the naked hero of a naval battle, with a story that no one would ever believe. Sailing back to Rome as the world's most unlikely naval hero, I kept an eye on my Carthaginian ancestor, who turned out to be the VIP bodyguard of the captured commander. He was as thrilled about our Roman holiday as I was thrilled about my unintended nudist adventure at sea. Strutting through Rome's bustling streets in a borrowed toga, I felt like a misplaced actor in a historical epic. My plan? Save my ancestor, who seemed more out of place than a vegetarian at a gladiator BBQ. The Romans, famous for their hospitality, were parading him around like a trophy. Time was of the essence, and here I was, a naked time traveler turned makeshift Roman hero, plotting a grand escape, I think. What could possibly go wrong? Flaunting my newfound and entirely accidental fame, I managed to persuade the Roman bigwigs that I needed some quality time with the prisoner for, strategic insights. Surprisingly, they lapped it up. Ah, the sweet, sweet perks of being a hero by sheer dumb luck. So there I was, night after night, sitting with my ancestor under the pretense of interrogation. We weren't plotting war strategies. No, we were piecing together his epic love story. Each tale of his sweetheart back in Carthage tugged at my heartstrings. Here I was, wondering if my chaotic time traveling had put a spanner in the works of their romance. Great, Charlie, I thought, saving the day and ruining love stories across time. The clock was ticking, and the Romans were planning a grand spectacle. A not-so-grand fate awaited my ancestor. It was now or never. Mustering all my courage, I devised a daring escape plan. It involved a few well-placed distractions, some fast talking, and a whole lot of luck. So there we were, about to embark on a plan that had "bad idea" written all over it. The plan? Stow away my ancestor on a trading ship. Simple, right? Wrong. We crept through the camp, me in my borrowed toga looking like a lost actor from a budget historical drama, and him trying his best not to look like a prisoner of war. Our first stroke of luck came when we stumbled upon a wine-laden cart. Distraction number one. I accidentally toppled it over, causing a scene straight out of a slapstick comedy. As the guards rushed to the commotion, we made a beeline for the docks, blending in with the crowd. It felt more like sneaking out of a high-security museum with the prized exhibit than a prison break. The plan was simple in theory, but as complex as a Rube Goldberg machine in practice. We dodged soldiers and navigated through the maze of crates and barrels like two clumsy spies in a low-budget historical thriller. There, amidst the chaos of loading and unloading, we found our golden ticket, a trading vessel bound for who knows where. We snuck aboard, hiding among sacks of grain like two kids in a hide-and-seek championship. As the ship set sail, I couldn't help but wonder if I just jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire, from hero to traitor in the blink of an eye. Well, at least it's never dull, I thought, as the shores of ancient Rome faded into the distance. I found myself cramped in a space that smelled suspiciously like stale bread and old socks. Great escape, Charlie, I mused. From hero to stowaway in one easy step. Every creak of the ship had me picturing a Roman soldier discovering us. I imagined explaining to the captain, "Sorry for the intrusion. Just a naked time traveler and his buddy here, hitching a ride. At least the sea breeze was a nice change from the jail cells. It had a certain eau de fish that was surprisingly refreshing. Night fell, and the stars above were a dizzying sight. Who needs a star chart when you've got a sky full of ancient constellations to navigate by? I joked to myself, trying to ignore the grumbling of my stomach. And not just from hunger this time. I was beginning to worry that I might have doomed myself to a lifetime of sea voyages and questionable hygiene. As we rocked on the waves, I pondered my next move. Maybe I'll start a new trend in Rome. Time-traveling sea captain. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Just then, a rat scurried across my foot, and I decided maybe the sea life wasn't for me after all. Lying there in the dark, listening to the sound of the waves, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, a man out of time, wondering if I'd ever see a toilet again. The life of a time traveler, never a dull moment. We finally arrived at a bustling port, and I nudged my Carthaginian comrade, now dubbed Hanno the Unlucky, to act like an eager dockhand. There we were, unloading cargo, me trying to blend in despite my accent sounding like a Roman trying to speak Carthaginian, and Hanno looking about as comfortable as a cat in a bath. Our unloading cargo act was going well until I dropped a crate of olives, causing a slippery mess. Amidst the chaos, we slipped away, Hanno leading us to his beloved's home. Picture this, a gruff, battle-hardened soldier reuniting with his love, and me, the third wheel, still awkwardly clad in my toga. As they embraced, I realized that despite the craziness, I'd helped rewrite a tiny piece of history. Hanno and his love, together at last, thanks to a time-traveling meddler. And there I stood, wondering if Cupid ever had to deal with historical paradoxes and a yearning for modern plumbing, as her belly began to glow bright. Just as Hanno and his love reunited, that familiar rumbling sensation signaled it was time for me to go. Well, this has been real, but it's time for me to, dash, I said, making my hasty goodbyes. I scurried off, desperately seeking a secluded spot to, let's say, trigger my return journey. Finally, in a quiet alley, as good as it gets in ancient Carthage, the time travel whoosh engulfed me. And just like that, I was back in my bathroom, present day, pants around my ankles, and Pharaoh meowing at the door. Home sweet home, I sighed, relieved. Another historical mishap navigated, and just in time for dinner. Back in my bathroom, I hesitated before opening the door, knowing Pharaoh wouldn't be thrilled about being left out of this adventure. As I looked down, a white paw slid under the door, accompanied by a soft, accusing meow. "Sorry, buddy," I whispered, bracing myself for the feline cold shoulder. Who knew time traveling could strain pet relationships? I opened the door to face the music, ready for a less than happy cat, but glad to be back in my own time. Until the next bathroom trip, that is. So I swing open the bathroom door, and there's Pharaoh, the feline judge and jury of my time-traveling escapades. He's sitting there, tail flicking with the intensity of a metronome set on very annoyed. The look he gives me could curdle milk. It's a mix of betrayal and, how dare you go on an adventure without me? He then proceeds to execute the perfect plan of feline revenge. With the grace of a disgruntled ballerina, he sidesteps over to my favorite plant. One calculated swipe of his paw, and boom, soil explosion, right there on the carpet. It's like his way of saying, "Next time, buddy, you better bring a kitty litter box with you through time." I can't help but laugh. There's Pharaoh, the cat who could hold a grudge better than any ancient Roman I've just left behind. Lesson learned. Never leave your time-traveling cat behind, or you'll come back to a living room that looks like a gardening experiment gone wrong. And so, with a begrudging cat and a carpet that's seen better days, we wrap up another chapter of my incredible, albeit unintentional, historical escapades. As I clean up the aftermath of Pharaoh's protest, I can't help but wonder where and when my next bathroom break will take me. Ancient Egypt? Medieval Europe? Or perhaps somewhere entirely unexpected? One thing's for sure. I'll be double-checking that bathroom door lock, just in case Pharaoh decides to join. Stay tuned for more of my Turd Ysseys, where history and hilarity collide in the most unexpected ways. And with that, another whirlwind journey through time wraps up. But the adventures of Mai and Pharaohs are far from over. What historical shenanigans await us next? Will Pharaoh ever forgive me for my solo escapade? Stay tuned for the next chapter of my Turd Ysseys, where history, humor, and a hint of cat attitude collide in the most unexpected ways. The past has never been this entertaining. Be sure to like and subscribe to keep the journey flowing. Till next time, what is your favorite weird food combo? Charlie out. Hey there, turdettes. Ready for another dive into the depths of history, courtesy of my unpredictable digestive system? Buckle up, because you're about to dive into another one of my bizarre Turd Ysseys. This time, it all started with needing more cat food. So I go down to the only grocery store I've shopped since spotting who I believe to be the Salem mystery woman. Months and still nothing. I'm left still scratching my head over that Salem woman sighting from weeks ago. She just vanished like a sock in a dryer. Samantha seems to think I am a little obsessed with her, but she hasn't been and seen what I have. So I return home to the new ruler of the House Pharaoh, who is giving me the all-familiar feed me stare. And that is where things take a turn. This time, our journey starts with an unexpected culinary adventure. Cat food, believe it or not. A can of cat food that smelled suspiciously gourmet. I know. My culinary standards might need a serious check. But hey, who am I to turn down a new taste adventure? In a moment of questionable judgment, I gave it a taste. Not bad, honestly. Pharaoh, however, glared at me like I'd just committed the ultimate betrayal, and spoiler alert, that might have been a mistake. There I was, a grown man, sampling Pharaoh's beef and gravy mix and finding it not half bad. But as every seasoned Turd Yssey reader knows, strange eating habits in my world often lead to even stranger travels. Brace yourself, because we're about to embark on a journey that makes eating cat food look like child's play. Fast forward half an hour as I'm debating my dinner options, still reminiscing about the cat food's unexpected culinary delight. My bowels start their time travel shimmy. Seriously? The cat food? I think, already dreading writing this one in the journal. Cat food as a time portal fuel? Why not? I thought. I dashed to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. No Pharaoh in sight, probably off dreaming about unforgivable owner betrayals. I settle in, ready for the usual whirlwind trip. But as the room starts spinning, here comes Pharaoh, flying out of nowhere, claws out like a cat superhero, landing smack on my back. And off we go. So there we were, Pharaoh and I, plopped in the middle of what looked like the set of a prehistoric reality show. Trees? Check. More trees. Double check. It was like Mother Nature had gone wild with the green crayon. The air was so fresh it almost had a taste. Nothing like the city smog I'm used to. The underbrush was a jungle gym of mystery plants, and the sounds. It was like nature's own orchestra, minus the conductor. Well, Pharaoh, I said, looks like we've hit the jackpot of untouched wilderness. Time to brush up on those survival skills I learned from reality TV. Pharaoh looked less than thrilled, probably wondering if his 9 lives covered time travel mishaps. The forest around us was like nature's version of a labyrinth. No signs, no paths, just endless greenery and the occasional curious squirrel. Fantastic, I muttered, looking around at the endless greenery. It's like we've stumbled into nature's own maze without a map. Maybe we'll run into a friendly caveman who can give us directions. Or better yet, a prehistoric food truck. There I was, hoping for a historic adventure. And what do I get? Lost in a forest that probably predates the concept of lost and found. Hope you're up for a bit of foraging, Pharaoh. It's about to get real Bear Grylls in here. As Pharaoh and I ventured further into the prehistoric forest, the reality of our situation started to sink in. So, buddy, what are the odds we find a 5-star restaurant around here? Slim to none? The trees seemed to stretch on forever, like giants gossiping above us. The forest floor was a mix of twigs, leaves, and the occasional mystery berry. Dinner options, leaves, berries, or leaves, I mused. The whole scene was like a nature documentary, minus the helpful voiceover explaining what not to eat. Guess it's time to channel my inner caveman. How hard can it be? Famous last words, right? As we trekked deeper, the chorus of forest sounds grew louder. Birds chirped like they were gossiping about the new arrivals. Us. Every step was an adventure in avoiding roots that seemed to reach out like sneaky tripwires. "Hey, Pharaoh! Watch out for the nature's booby traps!" I joked. Hunger began to nag at me, making me miss the days when food was just an app click away. Foraging for dinner, I mused, eyeing a berry bush suspiciously. Just how I imagined spending my evening. Pharaoh, on his part, seemed more interested in chasing shadows than foraging. Guess it's up to me to figure out the menu. Who needs a supermarket when you've got the whole forest at your disposal? I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. My stomach growled so loudly it sent a flock of birds into the air, which earned me a scornful look from Pharaoh. "Sorry, nature," I said, half expecting the animals to forgive my intrusion. I couldn't help but think of the beef and gravy cat food back home. "Bet you'd prefer that gourmet feast right now, eh, Pharaoh?" I chuckled, imagining us dining on cat food instead of foraging in a forest that predated civilization. Note to self, next time pack snacks even if they're for the cat. Just as I was about to pop a particularly juicy-looking berry into my mouth, a figure emerged from the underbrush. This person was different, shorter, sturdier, with wild hair and clothes that were, well, let's just say very au naturel. He gestured frantically at the berry, shaking his head. Turned out, I was inches away from sampling the local poisonous delicacies. Pharaoh, meanwhile, received a reaction that was part awe, part terror. The hunter-gatherer looked at him like he was some mythical beast. "Don't worry," I reassured our new friend. "He's mostly harmless. Just don't let him near your fish if you have any." The irony of a house cat inciting fear in the heart of a hunter. Gather-age humanity was not lost on me. Our Stone Age friend, now a bit more at ease but still eyeing Pharaoh warily, began to communicate through a series of gestures and grunts. It was like playing the world's most primitive game of charades. He pointed at various plants, teaching me which were safe to eat. I nodded, trying to commit his survival tips to memory. Pharaoh, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying his newfound status as a prehistoric enigma. He strutted around with an air of importance that said, "Yes, I am the mighty jungle creature you've never seen before." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're a regular celebrity here, Pharaoh. Maybe we should stick around and see if they start worshipping you. Ever say something you immediately regret?" So there we were, me trying to communicate with a real-life hunter, gatherman, and Pharaoh basking in his newfound prehistoric fame. Just as we were getting the hang of nonverbal communication 101, a series of cracking noises in the distance caused our new friend's face to turn pale. "What's that?" I asked, more to myself than anyone else. It's funny, in other time periods, I somehow always knew what people were saying, like I had a cosmic translator. But here, nothing. It was like my time traveler's language pack didn't include early human grunts. So much for being the Dr. Dolittle of time travel. Our Stone Age buddy looked like he'd seen a ghost, or maybe a saber-toothed tiger. Either way, it was clear. We were not alone in this ancient forest. Suddenly, Grunt, that's what I'd named our Stone Age friend, started biting at his arm and pointing towards the noises. Even without my handy cosmic translator, I got the message loud and clear. Something bad was coming, and it probably wanted to have us for dinner. Pharaoh, sensing danger, leaped into my arms with a look of pure feline terror. Grunt pointed in the opposite direction of the noises and bolted. "Well, I guess follow the local," I said, running after him with a cat clutched to my chest. "This is turning out to be one heck of a prehistoric cardio session." As we dashed through the forest, I looked to Pharaoh and asked, "Still think this was a good idea, huh?" His wide-eyed expression was all the answer I needed. He was definitely rethinking his impromptu decision to join this trip. Glancing back, what I saw made my heart race even faster. It was other humans, but not quite. Neanderthals? My memory flashed back to an episode of the Y-Files I'd watched, detailing how Neanderthals hunted. "Oh, great," I muttered. "Running from potentially cannibalistic prehistoric humans. Just what I needed to add to my time travel bingo card." Panting and dodging through ancient underbrush, I kept pace with Grunt, wondering just how far his prehistoric fitness regime would take us. "You know, Pharaoh," I gasped, "next time you decide to tag along, maybe pick a less life-threatening era?" Pharaoh clung to me, his claws a constant reminder of his regret. As we fled, the Neanderthals in pursuit seemed like something straight out of a horror movie, but with more fur and less dialogue. "Note to self," I panted. "Avoid any historical documentaries about Neanderthals. It's way less fun in person." Grunt suddenly led us to a cliff overlooking a river, and without hesitation, jumped. I looked at Pharaoh, whose claws were now a permanent fixture in my bare chest, because you know the rules of time travel. Birthday suits only. Well, it's now or never. With a deep breath and holding Pharaoh tightly in my arms, we were off the cliff and into the river in what felt like a blink. The shock of the cold water hit us like a freight train, but it was a refreshing change from the mad dash we'd just endured. Pharaoh, still clinging to me like his life depended on it, which, to be fair, it did, seemed to be having second thoughts about his adventurous spirit. As soon as we hit the chilly water, Pharaoh made a quick, tactical move from my arms straight to the top of my head. There he perched, like some sort of feline hat, his claws gripping my scalp as if it were a life raft. "Really, Pharaoh?" I grumbled, trying to keep us afloat. "You just had to pick the highest point, didn't you?" As I swam, I could feel his weight atop my head, a constant reminder of just how bizarre our situation was. As we swam away, I wondered if Neanderthals were keen swimmers. I glanced back to see our Neanderthal friends hesitating at the cliff edge. "Looks like we're in the clear, buddy," I said to Pharaoh. "No prehistoric Michael Phelps up there, it seems." Paddling away with a cat who now probably regrets his life choices, we watched as the Neanderthals just stood there, baffled. "Guess they never got their swimming badges," I quipped. Pharaoh, still perched on my head and looking like a drenched fur coat, was not amused. "Don't worry, Pharaoh," I joked. "I'll add swimming lessons to our time travel itinerary." As we floated downstream away from our prehistoric pursuers, I couldn't help but wonder what other joys the hunter-gatherer era had in store for us. Exiting the river and removing Pharaoh and his claws from my head, I guess Grunt was tired of my nakedness and handed me one of his animal skins to cover up my dingle-dangle, for which I was grateful. Grunt eventually led us to his camp, a cozy little setup that looked like something out of Primitive Architecture Weekly. And there, amidst a group of curious onlookers, was my first ancestor, a rugged, hunter-gatherer type who looked like he could wrestle a bear with one hand. The real star of the show, though? Pharaoh. The moment we introduced him, the camp went wild. They marveled at him like he was some sort of mini-deity. "Well, Pharaoh," I said, "enjoy your moment of fame. Just don't let it go to your furry head." But it was too late. Pharaoh, reveling in his newfound status, turned on his sweet, loving cat moves. Each woman in the camp was treated to his signature headbutt and purr routine. It was like watching a furry Casanova at work. "Look at you, Pharaoh," I chuckled. "The world's first cat heartthrob." He sauntered around the camp like he owned the place, with each purr and rub eliciting oohs and ahs from his adoring fans. "Don't forget who feeds you when we get back to the future," I reminded him, but Pharaoh was too busy being worshipped to pay any attention. Watching Pharaoh bask in his newfound glory, a hilarious thought crossed my mind. What if this is his master plan? To take over the world, one ancient civilization at a time? There he was, weaving through the legs of our hunter-gatherer friends, his every purr and meow commanding attention. Today it's a prehistoric camp. Tomorrow, who knows? Maybe he'll be ruling over a kingdom with humans as his loyal subjects. I laughed at the absurdity of it. Pharaoh, the world's first feline overlord with a time-traveling human as his sidekick. Wait, that couldn't happen, right? I'll have to research that more later, for now I was approaching my ancestor. I tried my best. Hey there, I'm Charlie, your very, very distant relative. So, any romantic escapades in your life? Anyone caught your prehistoric eye? His response? A blank stare followed by a grunt. It was like trying to interview a caveman version of the Mona Lisa. You're quite the conversationalist, aren't you? I quipped. Guess I won't be getting any juicy family gossip from you. It was a comedic attempt at bridging a few thousand years gap in social skills. Love life in the Stone Age remained an unsolved mystery. As I was trying to decipher the love life of my stone-faced ancestor, a spear whizzed by my head and thudded into the chest of a bystander. Chaos erupted. The hunter-gatherers around me started grunting in unison, a prehistoric alarm bell. Well, that escalated quickly, I muttered, dodging another incoming spear. Amidst the pandemonium, Pharaoh sprang into action, leaping and hissing, miraculously saving a woman from a Neanderthal attacker. Who knew, I thought. Pharaoh, the prehistoric hero. Maybe he should consider a career in time travel security. In the midst of chaos, Pharaoh, usually a laid-back feline, transformed into a furry warrior. A Neanderthal had snuck up. Which is it? Moving on, he came up behind one of the hunter-gatherer women, club raised. With feline agility, Pharaoh leaped, hissing and swiping with a ferocity I'd never seen. Startled, the Neanderthal stumbled back, giving the woman a chance to escape. Pharaoh stood his ground, back arched, a pint-sized sentinel. It was a sight to behold, a house cat taking on a prehistoric hunter. Well done, Pharaoh, I thought. You might just be the first feline hero in history. Pharaoh, now the center of attention, stood defiantly, his fur bristled like the mane of a lion. The Neanderthals, unsure of what to make of this fearless feline, hesitated. This gave the hunter-gatherers a chance to regroup and retaliate. Amidst the spears and shouts, I couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and amusement. Never thought I'd see the day when my cat turns into a prehistoric superhero, I said, watching Pharaoh with a mixture of pride and disbelief. This was definitely going into the most memorable moments section of my time travel journal. As I was processing the heroics of my cat, I noticed one of the Neanderthals dragging my ancestor away. Panic set in. I sprinted after them, but they were surprisingly fast. My mind raced with flashbacks from that Y-Files episode, how Neanderthals supposedly favored humans as a food source. Great, now it's a rescue mission, I thought, dodging branches and leaping over rocks. Save the ancestor, save the timeline. No pressure, Charlie. My lungs burned as I pushed through the underbrush, determined to not let my family tree get pruned by a Neanderthal's appetite. Suddenly, a wave of panic hit me. Pharaoh! I'd left him back at Grunt's camp in the midst of all the chaos. Great, Charlie, real smooth, I chastised myself. Leave your time-traveling cat in the Stone Age. He's probably off starting his own feline dynasty. The thought of Pharaoh, alone and possibly staging a cat coup, added another level of urgency. I needed to rescue my ancestor and get back to Pharaoh before he decided to rewrite history as we know it. See, this is why you don't take cats time-traveling. In the flickering firelight, I spotted my ancestor tied up. It was clear he was set to be the Neanderthal's next meal. Time to switch from sarcastic time-traveler to stealthy savior, I muttered to myself. After the Neanderthals finished their what appeared to be bear feast, they seemed sluggish, which worked in my favor. I crept closer, keeping to the shadows. I untied my ancestor with the finesse of a ninja, trying to communicate a silent plan of escape with urgent gestures. Thankfully, he caught on quickly. We made our escape under the cover of darkness, slipping away from the camp while the Neanderthals dozed. Dinner and a show, I quipped quietly, but I'll pass on being the main course. So there we were walking back to camp. Another successful rescue, I mused, courtesy of Charlie's time-traveling rescue service. Making our way back to the camp, relief washed over us. We had narrowly escaped becoming part of the Neanderthal menu. Upon arrival, I found Pharaoh living his best life. The women had made him a veritable throne of fluffy furs. He lay there, basking in adoration, looking every bit the feline deity. Seeing Pharaoh lounging like an ancient feline overlord, a wave of worry hit me. What if I hadn't returned? Would Pharaoh have altered the course of history with his unexpected godlike status among these people? The thought of a cat-influenced future was both amusing and slightly terrifying. "Time to bring you back to reality, Your Highness," I said to Pharaoh. It was crucial to get us both back to our own time before our presence made any more ripples in the fabric of history. But still, my other ancestors were nowhere to be seen. Just as we were getting comfy, the camp's warning grunts began to sound off again. What now? Did someone invite the Neanderthals for a rematch? I wondered. Then, out of nowhere, a female Neanderthal charged in, targeting my newly rescued ancestor. To my utter disbelief, my stomach did the time travel tango. You've got to be kidding me, I thought. She's my other ancestor? Watching her drag him away with ease, I realized my family tree was more like a family action movie. Time for round 2 of ancestral rescue, this time with a twist of Neanderthal romance. Chasing after them, I stumbled upon a scene that was, let's just say, more educational than I'd bargained for. It appeared my Neanderthal ancestor had chosen her mate, and she wasn't shy about it. Just as I was about to turn around, because there are some things you can't unsee, my time travel belly started its dance, and her belly began to glow. Time to go, Charlie, I thought, making a mental note to erase this image from my brain. I turned to rush back to camp for Pharaoh, eager to escape this prehistoric romance novel. Rushing back to camp, the chaos from earlier was simmering down. Amidst the settling dust and relieved sighs, Pharaoh sat like a royal on his fur throne. Even with the prior pandemonium, locating Pharaoh was surprisingly easy. He was still perched atop his throne of furs, basking in adoration. His expression when I scooped him up was pure feline indignation. "Sorry, Your Majesty," I said. "Time to abdicate the fur throne." I bolted towards a large tree, the closest thing to a private spot in this era. Pharaoh, disgruntled and disheveled, clung to me as the familiar whoosh began. In a whirl of time and space, we were sucked back through the portal, landing unceremoniously back in my modern bathroom. The abrupt return to the present was a bit too much for my system. Let's just say my bowels decided to celebrate our arrival immediately. Pharaoh, still in my arms and less than pleased about being yanked from his furry reign, gave me a look of utter betrayal. "Well, Pharaoh," I said amidst the chaos of our return, "that's one way to end a time-traveling adventure." As I cleaned up the aftermath, Pharaoh seemed to be contemplating the perks of being a regular, non-time-traveling cat. Home. Sweet home. Pharaoh looked around, probably missing his fur throne already. "Welcome back to reality," I told him, as we both took a moment to adjust to the sudden shift from prehistoric to present. After washing my hands and coming to terms with the abrupt end of our prehistoric escapade, I watched Pharaoh saunter away, his tail high. Probably off to plot his next attempt at world domination, or maybe just to find a sunny spot for a nap. So, to recap, I tasted cat food, time-traveled to the hunter-gatherer era, became a part of a Stone Age love triangle again, witnessed my cat ascend to deity status, and barely escaped becoming a Neanderthal's dinner. Just another day in the life of Charlie and his time-traveling cat, Pharaoh. Who knows where or when we'll end up next? Stay tuned for more adventures in the wild world of time-traveling toilets and feline overlord aspirations. And there you have it. Just a typical day in our time-traveling saga. Honestly, who needs a history book when you have a magic toilet and a cat with delusions of grandeur? Stay tuned for what's next in the chronicles of Charlie and Pharaoh, the feline overlord. Wrapping up this wild ride, I can't help but wonder what Samantha would think of all this. She's been suspiciously quiet lately. Maybe it's time to bring her into the fold of my time-traveling escapades. Who knows, perhaps she has a knack for prehistoric politics, or can give Pharaoh a run for his money as ruler of the ancient world. Stick around. The next chapter might just feature Samantha stepping into the time-traveling spotlight with Charlie and Pharaoh, the dynamic and slightly dysfunctional time-traveling trio. Now time to write beef and gravy down in my journal on the do-not-eat list. Till next time, Turdettes, Charlie out. Hey there, Turdettes. Brace yourselves because I've stumbled upon something absolutely mind-blowing in the realm of time-traveling bowel movements. Yes, you heard that right. Just when I thought my adventures couldn't get any stranger, the universe decided to throw me a curveball. I've uncovered a connection, a piece of the puzzle that links all my chaotic trips through time. And let me tell you, it's not what you'd expect. Stay tuned, because this revelation is going to change everything we thought we knew about my, let's call it, unique mode of transportation. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. So there we were, Samantha and I, in the idyllic setting of what was supposed to be the perfect picnic. The sun was shining. The birds were probably doing whatever birds do. And I had managed to not burn the sandwiches. A new personal best. As we laid out our feast on the checkered blanket, everything seemed picture perfect. Samantha was laughing at my attempt to uncork the wine, which, by the way, was more stubborn than a mule in a mud bath. Maybe it's childproof, she teased, clearly enjoying my struggle. Just as I was about to declare victory over the bottle and about to indulge in what promised to be a culinary masterpiece of a sandwich, my body sounded the alarm. The kind of alarm that says, "This is not a drill." Samantha caught the look of sheer panic in my eyes. "Nature calls?" she asked, with a smirk that suggested she found my discomfort slightly more entertaining than the prospect of enjoying our picnic. I nodded, grimacing. "It's urgent. Be right back," I declared, leaping up with the grace of a gazelle. Well, a gazelle on a pogo stick, maybe. Perfect timing. I scanned the horizon, my eyes locking onto the only available sanctuary. The park's bathroom was in sight, but as I made my desperate dash, I saw the dreaded occupied sign swinging in the breeze. Cue the dramatic music. My eyes scanned once more and landed on my only hope, a lone porta-potty standing proudly in a nearby construction site. This is it, I thought, my moment of truth. Sneaking over like a cat burglar with questionable motives, I slipped inside the porta-potty, praying to the time travel gods for a quick and uneventful trip. But as fate would have it, I was whisked away to 800 AD, leaving behind the 21st century, and more importantly, my clothes. As I stood there taking in the rustic charm of the early Middle Ages, I couldn't help but think, well, Charlie, you've really outdone yourself this time. A naked time traveler with a penchant for public restrooms. If this isn't living the dream, I don't know what is. And so, my quest for clothing and clues about my whereabouts began, all while wondering how Samantha was faring back at our picnic. Probably enjoying the wine, I mused. Cheers to you, my dear. So there I was, doing my best impression of an early Middle Ages ninja, trying desperately not to be seen. Because, let's face it, time travel has this perverted sense of humor that always leaves me in the buff. And just when I thought my day couldn't get any weirder, I spot a monastery. Bingo, I thought to myself. If anywhere's gonna have some spare robes lying around, it's got to be a monastery. Walking into the place, I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. They wrapped me up in a robe faster than you can say, involuntary streaker. It was a relief, really, both for me and, I'm sure, for the aesthetic sensibilities of the time. Now here's where things get a bit spicy. I ran into this nun, right? And not just any nun, but my ancestor. How did I know? Well, my bowels have this weird way of rumbling whenever I'm near family. It's like a genetic spidey sense. only a lot less cool and a lot more awkward. But here's the kicker. She's a nun. A nun. Of all the ancestors I could have stumbled upon, I find the one who's sworn off the whole marriage and kids deal. Great, I thought. How's this going to work? So, I'm there, scratching my head, trying to figure out the family tree logistics, when days turn into a blur of me trying to find my male ancestor. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, if the haystack was a time vortex and the needle was a dude who apparently didn't want to be found. And then, as if the universe hadn't thrown enough curveballs my way, I bump into the woman from my Salem witch trial adventure. You remember? The one where I accidentally started a dance craze to avoid my ancestor from being burned at the stake? Yeah, her. So I go up to her, all casual-like, and start grilling her about why she's tailing me through time. I'm throwing out references to grocery stores, Lord Geoffrey of Montclair. You know, the usual banter. But she looks at me like I've just sprouted a second head. There is only one Lord and Savior, she tells me, clearly not a fan of my history mashup. That's when it hits me. Maybe this isn't the same woman from Salem, or if it is, this is our first chronological meet. Time travel, am I right? It's enough to make your head spin. As she wanders off to pray for my obviously troubled soul, or just to escape the conversation, I'm left standing there, marveling at the absurdity of it all. Maybe I should just embrace the role of the local oddball, I muse. Lord Charlie of the time-traveling troubadours at your service. Oh, the plot thickens like medieval porridge. There I was, playing the world's worst game of hide-and-seek, tailing the mysterious Salem woman like a detective in a low-budget historical drama. And just when I thought I had a lead, she pulls a Houdini with some random guy in the woods. 1 minute they're there, the next, poof. Gone. Behind a tree, no less. Because of course, trees in the Middle Ages are known for their magical disappearing properties, right? So, there I am, wandering around the woods like a lost child at a Renaissance fair, looking for any sign of these two. Hours pass and I find zilch. Nada. Nothing but squirrels mocking me, and birds probably gossiping about the weirdo in the robe. Eventually, I trudge back to the monastery, half expecting to see a wanted poster with my face on it for being the creepiest monk in history. Just as I'm about to give up on my career as a time-traveling PI, the Salem siren returns, just before dusk, acting as if vanishing into thin air is just a normal Tuesday activity. And let me tell you, every time I see her, it's like my brain forgets the concept of time travel and fixates on her, like she's the last piece of chocolate in the box. I have to mentally slap myself and remember, Charlie, you've got a girlfriend who exists in the right century, might I add. But then, as if the universe decided I hadn't had enough surprises, the next day brings a plot twist straight out of a soap opera. The local farmers come by, doing their bit with veggies and offering to fix things. Because apparently, medieval Yelp reviews depended on how many turnips you could barter. And who do I spot among them? My male ancestor. It's like finding Waldo if Waldo was responsible for your existence. Now, the logical thing to do would be to focus on getting these two lovebirds together. You know, ensure my eventual birth and all that. But no. My brain decides this is the perfect opportunity to go all home improvement around the monastery. Not to play matchmaker to my ancestors, but to keep tabs on Miss Houdini and her woodland escapades. Days turn into a DIY montage, with me hammering away at things that probably didn't need fixing, all under the guise of being helpful. But let's be real, I was less interested in the structural integrity of the monastery and more in solving the mystery of the disappearing woman. Because priorities, right? So there I was, the world's most distracted handyman, splitting my focus between carpentry and casually stalking, not my ancestors for a change, but a woman who probably thinks the highest form of technology is a well-crafted broomstick. And through it all, I'm trying to piece together how a time-traveling Lothario is supposed to navigate the complexities of medieval romance, ancestor matchmaking, and the occasional existential crisis about whether I'm more suited to the role of Cupid or Sherlock Holmes in burlap. So, after witnessing Salem woman and her mysterious woodsman friend do their whole portal jumping act, I'm not just puzzled. I'm like a walking question mark, draped in a monk's robe, with a side of existential crisis. Every evening she would return to the monastery, and she and my ancestor would sit down for dinner like they were old chums from a time-traveling book club. Now let me paint you a picture of these dinners. Imagine, if you will, me, Charlie, the not-so-invisible man, skulking behind pillars and peeking around corners, trying to eavesdrop on their conversations without looking like I'm auditioning for the role of creepy monastery stalker. Salem woman and my nun ancestor would chat and laugh, completely oblivious to my spying. Their bond was undeniable. Here was the Salem time traveler / witchwoman, a woman who could apparently navigate time and space, choosing to spend her evenings with a woman destined to be my very, very, very unknown numbers of great-grandma. It's like finding out your favorite superhero and your great-grandmother have tea every Thursday. Bizarre doesn't even begin to cover it. The more I watched them, the more I realized that she seemed to genuinely care for my ancestor. They shared stories, exchanged what looked like recipes, because sure, time-traveling women exchange medieval quiche recipes, and laughed like they were the best of friends. And there's me, feeling like I'm watching the most historically inaccurate sitcom ever written. But let's get back to the portal thing, because honestly, that's not something you see every day. Unless you're me, apparently. After I picked my jaw up off the floor, I decided I needed answers. But how do you approach someone and casually ask, "Hey, so I noticed you and your buddy hopping through a magical portal in the woods. Mind telling me what that's all about?" Subtlety isn't exactly my strong suit, but then again, neither is time travel etiquette. So there I was, full of questions and short on answers, living a life that felt increasingly like I was stuck in a game of cosmic jeopardy. Salem woman's nightly visits to the monastery became the highlight of my days, and not just because I was fascinated by her and her mysterious portal-jumping abilities. No, it was more than that. It was the realization that, in this strange medieval setting, connections were being made that transcended time and space, connections that, somehow, I was a part of. Each night, as I watched her and my ancestor from the shadows, I couldn't help but wonder about the nature of these connections. Were they merely coincidences, or was there a deeper purpose to our encounters? And more importantly, how did I fit into all of this? Was I just a bystander in the grand scheme of time, or did I have a role to play in this unfolding drama? So, after days of my top-notch, totally not creepy surveillance, the Salem enchantress herself finally calls me out. She corners me, her eyes narrowing, probably trying to figure out if I'm a spy, a madman, or just a particularly nosy monk. "Why do you watch me so?" she demands, her voice a mix of curiosity and annoyance. With the grace of a cat caught stealing cream, I blurt out, "What's your name?" Because obviously, that's the pressing question here, not, "Why do I feel the need to watch you like a medieval reality show?" She eyes me warily before answering. "Morgan. Just Morgan. Like Madonna or Cher, only with more medieval mystique." "I'm Charlie," I say, extending my hand in a greeting that's about 8 centuries too early. We shake hands and it's awkward, not least because I'm pretty sure handshakes haven't been invented yet. What now, I think? We then delve into conversation about the happenings of 800 AD. How would that go? Something like, "So, how about that Charlemagne, huh? Quite the character." She responds, "Indeed. His educational reforms are quite the talk of the land. Though I'm more interested in the advances in agriculture. Did you know they've started using heavy plows? Fascinating." Then I just nod along as if I have any clue what she's talking about and reply, "Oh, absolutely. Heavy plows. Game changers. Really revolutionizes the whole plowing field." Morgan then replies, raising her eyebrow, "You're quite the odd fellow, Charlie. Your words are strange and your knowledge peculiar." Trying to recover, I blurt out, "Well, you know what they say. When in Rome, or, well, not Rome, Close enough. The conversation somehow manages to spiral further into territories of obscure historical facts. We then part ways, and I'm left more lost than before. Morgan remains an enigma wrapped in a riddle, all encased in a medieval mystery. And me? I'm just a guy who knows a lot about the future, and very little about making sense in the past. While I imagine a conversation, Morgan leaves, not deterred by my lack of progress. I double down on my efforts to follow her, and this time I witness something that actually makes my jaw drop. The older gentleman with her in the woods. Turns out he's not just her weekly chess partner. He raises a walking stick, smacks it to the ground, and voila, they step through a portal and vanish. Just like that. And here I am, thinking my bowel-induced time travel was the pinnacle of mystical transportation. When Morgan returns to the monastery at sundown for her nightly ritual, she dines with my relative, the nun, and their connection is unmistakable. It's weirdly heartwarming yet utterly confusing. Morgan seems to genuinely enjoy my ancestors' company, laughing and sharing stories as if they were old friends. And there I am, hiding behind a column like it's my job, trying to piece together how Morgan fits into this whole time travel puzzle and why she's so chummy with my nun ancestor. The whole situation is as baffling as trying to explain the internet to a medieval peasant. Morgan's nightly visits to the monastery, her apparent time-traveling escapades, and her fondness for my ancestor have thrown me for a loop. And yet, despite all this, I'm no closer to understanding who she really is, or what her role is in the grand scheme of things. All I know is that time travel is strange. People are even stranger, and I'm just a guy caught in the middle, trying to make sense of it all with a sense of humor and a chronic case of temporal displacement. All right, so there I was, thinking it was high time I wrapped up this medieval soap opera and got back to my own time, preferably before I turned into a turnip from eating so many of them. I figured the best way to kickstart my journey back was to play medieval matchmaker. Enter Edgith, my nun ancestor, and Alaric, the guy I'd pegged as my ticket home. Crafting a love connection in the early Middle Ages? Not as easy as you'd think. I couldn't just swipe right on ye old Tinder. So I concocted a plan that involved a lot of talking up Alaric to Edgith, mentioning how his turnip stew was divine, a bold-faced lie, mind you, and how his ability to read at a third-grade level was considered peak intelligence around these parts. Finally, under the guise of a religious gathering, I managed to get Edgith and Alaric in the same room. There was more awkward silence than conversation initially, but eventually they started bonding over their mutual disdain for the Vikings and their love for poorly illuminated manuscripts. It was like watching paint dry, but somehow it worked. Then, the moment of truth. Edgith's belly glowed, signaling my cue to be whisked back to my own time. Except nothing happened. No rumble in my bowels, no portal, nothing. I stood there, waiting for my time-traveling express ride, wondering if my digestive system had finally given up on me after one too many turnips or fish preserved in fermented grape juice. Meanwhile, Edgith and Alaric, caught up in their newfound love, decided to ditch the monastery faster than you can say medieval scandal, leaving me behind to deal with the fallout. And oh, the fallout. Morgan was livid. If looks could kill, I'd have been 6 feet under, wearing a turnip crown. She was fuming because her best friend, Edgith, had been exiled, all thanks to my meddling. Suddenly, I wasn't just the weird time traveler. I was public enemy number 1 in Morgan's eyes. Now, instead of me tailing Morgan, the tables had turned. She was on my case, shadowing me with the intensity of a hawk eyeing a field mouse. So when I wandered down to the river to fetch water, who should I run into but Morgan and her mysterious woodsman pal? There I was, bucket boy, facing off against medieval times' most intriguing duo. Trying to cut the tension with my usual flair for humor, I quipped, "What do you want, Merlin?" Because honestly, the old guy had wizard vibes written all over him. To my shock, he looked taken aback and replied, "How have you heard of me?" My brain short-circuited. I dropped the buckets, water sloshing everywhere as it hit me. "Wait, you're Merlin?" As in, the Merlin? Morgan and Merlin, because yes, that's who he was, stared at me like I'd just performed a magic trick of my own. Why would you call me by my name if you didn't know it was my name? Merlin asked, clearly puzzled. And then, because my mouth apparently has no chill, I blurted out, Shit, then your last name is LeFay? Oh, shit. The realization hit me like a sack of medieval bricks. I was standing in front of Merlin and Morgan Le Fay, two legends of Arthurian lore, and I just accidentally insulted one and made an enemy of the other. If there was a handbook on how to royally mess up historical encounters, I was pretty sure I'd just written the preface. So there I stood, a man out of time, soaked in river water, face to face with two of history's most iconic figures, realizing that my adventures in time travel were about to get a whole lot more complicated. And all I could think was, Charlie, you've really outdone yourself this time. Oh, enough with this lunacy! Morgan exploded, her voice echoing off the trees and probably startling a couple of medieval squirrels into dropping their nuts. You are the cause of my love being here no more and running off with that peasant. She pointed a finger at me, and I swear, if looks could start fires, I'd be a human bonfire. Then she hit me with the big guns. A curse. Yeah, you heard that right. Morgan Le Fay, in all her legendary fury, decided to curse me and my entire family tree. Your family tree will wither, she proclaimed, getting all Shakespearean on me. And those branches that are not severed by the curse, I will prune myself. Honestly, the idea of Morgan Le Fay taking gardening shears to my family tree was both terrifying and kind of hilarious. As she announced the curse, the atmosphere changed. Fog rolled in like a cheesy horror movie effect, swirling around us. I half expected a dramatic organ chord to play somewhere in the background. And then, the curse took hold. But where? Oh, right. My bowels. Because where else would a curse aimed at me take effect? I felt a stirring, a rumbling deep within, like a demonic food processor set on high. It was the kind of internal upheaval that legends are made of, the sort that might have writers penning tales about the great gastrointestinal disturbance of our time. In a moment of desperation, or maybe just sheer cheekiness, I interrupted Morgan's dramatic cursing ceremony. Hey, if you don't put this curse on me, wouldn't this entire thing never have happened? I asked, trying to logic my way out of a medieval curse because, why not? Morgan's fury hit new heights. I look forward to the day we meet again, she seethed. I will relish in your misery. And with that ominous promise, she vanished into the fog, leaving me to ponder the complexities of time travel causality and curse logistics. And then, as if on cue, the rumbling in my bowels reached its crescendo. Whoosh! In a flash, I was back in the porta-potty, my time-traveling chariot, releasing what felt like a week's worth of pent-up. Well, you get the picture. The curse, it seemed, had a rather immediate and, tangible effect. So there I was, back in my own time, in the least glamorous way possible. The curse had worked its dark magic, but instead of withering family trees or pruning branches, it seemed to have focused all its mystical energy on giving me the most epic bowel movement of my life. Take that, Morgan Le Fay, I thought, trying to find some dignity in the moment. Your curse can't keep a good man down, especially when he's already sitting. Damn, should have asked her about the whole naked time-traveling thing. As I wondered about the temporal logistics of my latest adventure, a wave of panic washed over me. How long had I been gone? My thoughts immediately flew to Samantha, potentially still sitting alone in the park, the remnants of our picnic now a feast for ants. The realization hit me like a ton of medieval turnips. In a frenzy, I tried to exit my aromatic time capsule, only to find the door wouldn't budge. Locked. From the outside. Great, I muttered. From time-traveling to porta-potty prisoner in one fell swoop. Resigned but not defeated, I whipped out my phone, thank heavens for modern technology, and dialed Samantha. The phone rang, each tone echoing my growing dread. When she finally picked up, the chill in her voice could have frozen the entire park. Samantha, You're not going to believe this, but I'm locked in a porta-potty." Her response was as cold as a medieval winter. "Really, Charlie? Because I can't believe you left me alone. Again." I could practically hear her rolling her eyes through the phone. Desperate, I pleaded. "Can you at least go feed Pharaoh? I don't want him to start plotting my demise." There was a pause, and for a moment I thought I might have swayed her with the feline gambit. But no, Samantha was standing her ground. "No, Charlie. It's time you experienced being abandoned. Let's see how you like it." And with that, she hung up, leaving me to my fate. I checked the time on my phone. 5 a.m. Well, guess I have another hour before the construction crew shows up, I sighed, trying to find the silver lining in being trapped in a porta-potty at the crack of dawn. Thank heavens it wasn't a weekend, or I'd be in for a much longer stay. As I sat there contemplating my life choices and the peculiarities of time travel, I couldn't help but chuckle. From being cursed by Morgan Le Fay to getting locked in a porta-potty, my life had taken some pretty bizarre turns. But hey, at least it was never dull. Finally, the sound of footsteps and voices heralded the arrival of the construction crew. The door swung open, and I was greeted by a couple of bewildered workers who probably hadn't expected to find a man locked in their porta-potty first thing in the morning. "Morning, gents," I said, stepping out into the fresh air. "You wouldn't believe the night I've had." As I walked away from the construction site, free at last, I realized that no matter how strange or challenging life got, there was always a way out, sometimes literally. And as for Samantha and Pharaoh, well, I'd have to come up with a pretty good apology. Maybe something involving less time travel and more reliable picnic planning. As I stumbled back into the realm of the present, still slightly dazed from my latest foray into the annals of the absurd, I couldn't help but muse over my life's newfound direction, chronic time traveling via the world's most unconventional method. The Turd Yssey, my personal odyssey, but with more unexpected pit stops and far less dignity. And there I was, pondering life's big questions like whether anyone had thought to commercialize fermented fish and grape juice yet. It's the kind of delicacy that could either revolutionize the culinary world or get you banned from it entirely. But hey, after what I've been through, it sounds like a Michelin star-worthy snack. Reflecting on the sheer lunacy of my adventures, I found a weird sense of pride in understanding the bizarre tapestry that my travels had woven. It's not every day you get cursed by a legendary sorceress, make a fool of yourself in multiple centuries, and develop a complex about porta-potties. But here I am, a pioneer in the field of time-traveling bowel movements, charting the unexplored territories of history with nothing but a questionable digestive system and an even more questionable sense of judgment. So, to my dear Turdettes, as we close this chapter of cosmic commodes and historical hijinks, remember, life is too short to take seriously, especially when you're being catapulted through time by the power of your own gastrointestinal tract. Stay tuned, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the universe has a wicked sense of humor, and my Turd Yssey's are far from over. We'll dive into the next chapter with the grace of a gazelle strapped to a jetpack, navigating the winds of fate with the elegance of a three-legged giraffe. Keep your wits sharp and your toilet paper closer, Turdettes. The next adventure awaits, and if my track record is anything to go by, it's sure to be a doozy. Who knows what historical figures we'll accidentally insult next, or what culinary abominations we'll encounter. Here's to embracing the absurdity of life, one time-traveling turd trip at a time. Because in the end, isn't it the journey that makes the story worth telling? Even if that journey smells a bit off and leaves you questioning your life choices. Catch you on the flip side of history. Charlie out. Greetings, Turdettes, you insatiable connoisseurs of historical hijinks and time travel tomfoolery. Buckle up, buttercups, because you're about to dive headfirst into another chapter of Charlie's Turd Yssey's Chronicles. I know, you've been on the edge of your seats, popcorn in hand, eagerly awaiting to see what epic I unwittingly desecrate next with my presence. Well, who am I to keep such adoring fans in suspense? Prepare yourselves for a tale so bewildering, it'll make you question the fabric of reality, the sanity of our protagonist, that's me in case you've forgotten, and the nutritional choices that lead to inadvertent time travel. Yes, dear readers, as we embark on this latest escapade, remember, history is not only written by the victors, but also by those who accidentally stumble through it while trying to find the nearest restroom. So, grab your historical hats, and maybe a digestive aid or two, because we're about to leap into the unknown. And by unknown, I mean whichever period of history I accidentally crash next, thanks to a dubious breakfast choice. Will it be ancient Rome, where I inadvertently invent the toga party? Medieval England, where I somehow become the inspiration for the legend of the Headless Horseman? Don't ask. Or perhaps the Renaissance, where my dance moves spark a new art movement. The suspense is killing you, I can tell. Well, fret not, for all shall be revealed in due time. After all, what's a little wait between friends, especially when you've got the most unreliable narrator in history, pun intended, leading the charge? Here we go, turdettes, into the annals of time and the depths of digestive despair. May our journey be filled with laughter, learning, and the occasional emergency landing in a historically significant moment. Yours in time travel and questionable dietary decisions. There I was sitting there trying to wrap my head around the whirlwind that is my life. I can't help but reminisce about the recent revelations and the sheer absurdity of my situation. Morgan Le Fay, the legendary enchantress herself, turned out to be the architect behind my time-traveling escapades. Imagine that. A figure straight out of Arthurian legend decides I'm the perfect candidate for a little temporal disruption, courtesy of my own digestive system. It's like finding out you've been punked by a character from a medieval manuscript. The irony of it all? I had to travel back in time just to get cursed by the person who made it possible in the first place. Time travel really does tie your brain in knots, doesn't it? It's like trying to follow a recipe written in a language that only exists because you accidentally invented it during one of your trips to the past. And then there's my food journal, my attempt to make sense of the nonsensical. If I thought tracking my meals would offer any insight into my unpredictable journeys, I was sorely mistaken. So far, all I've managed to document is a direct correlation between questionable dining choices and even more questionable destinations. Still, I press on, ever hopeful that I might stumble upon a pattern or, at the very least, a decent meal that doesn't end with me crash-landing in another century. Of course, no reflection on my recent adventures would be complete without mentioning Pharaoh, my trusty feline sidekick, who decided to express his displeasure at my unplanned absences in the most creative of ways. His latest masterpiece involved my favorite pair of sneakers and a strategically placed hairball. It's his way of reminding me that, no matter how far or how often I travel, I'll always have responsibilities here at home, namely making sure he's well-fed and content. Message received, buddy. And then there's Samantha, who's still not exactly thrilled about being left alone in the park. Despite my best efforts to explain the unexplainable, I got cursed by a medieval sorceress. Doesn't seem to be smoothing things over. The unpredictability of this curse has turned my life into a sort of cosmic lottery. Never quite sure when I'll be called upon for another jaunt through the annals of history. As I ponder the complexities of my situation, I can't help but laugh at the sheer absurdity of it all. Who knew that one's digestive tract could hold the key to time travel? Or that an attempt to understand it would lead to cursed voyages, feline schemes, and relationship trials? It's a strange world I find myself navigating, but it's mine, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, to those of you following along, wondering what bizarre twist my life will take next, I say, stay tuned. The journey is far from over, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that history is full of surprises, and so is my colon. As for this episode, let's rewind and get our timeline straight. Because in my life, timelines are more like spaghetti than straight lines. The memory of firefighters knocking down the bathroom door is a gem from a previous episode. The sheer embarrassment of that incident has lingered like a bad aftertaste, making every rush to the bathroom fraught with the fear of a repeat performance. Ah yes, post-whoosh pandemonium at work, because let's face it, that scene deserves its own spotlight. As I made my mad dash to the employee bathroom, haunted by the memory of my last temporal escapade, when the door flew open with a dramatic flourish only achievable by firefighters wielding axes, ready to rescue, well, me, from apparently nothing more dire than poor hand-washing technique. The look on their faces was a priceless mix of confusion, relief, and mild irritation. There I was, not trapped or in distress, just diligently scrubbing away while they stood there, axes in hand, probably re-evaluating their life choices. "Good timing, fellas," I quipped, drying my hands with the nonchalance of a man who had just returned from the Old West. "Care for a tutorial on the proper way to wash your hands? It's flu season, after all." The response was less verbal and more an eloquent symphony of eye rolls and sighs, the kind that said, "We're not paid enough for this." As they turned to leave, one of them muttered something about installing a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the bathroom door. I couldn't help but agree. When it comes to my life, a "beware of unpredictable time travel bowels" warning might be more appropriate. Now at a clinched full, sprinted for the employee bathroom, haunted by the past. I couldn't shake the image of burly firefighters bursting in, axes ready, only to find me, not in peril, but possibly mid-whoosh to another era. This time, as the familiar rumble announced an imminent departure, I couldn't help but think, here we go again. Brace yourself, bathroom door, and maybe prepare a statement for the firefighters. The thought of explaining my predicament to another set of first responders had me considering a preemptive move to a deserted island. At least there, the only things knocking down my door would be coconuts. As I contemplated a life of solitude and coconuts, a part of me couldn't help but worry about Pharaoh, my cat, who seemed to have developed a taste for temporal turbulence. "Sorry, buddy," I muttered, imagining his indignant huff at being left behind from what could have been our greatest adventure yet. Little did I know, the universe had a twisted sense of timing. No sooner had my butt made contact with the cold embrace of the toilet seat than the whoosh I had been dreading, and secretly hoping for, seized me. In a whirlwind of cosmic irony, I found myself hurled through the temporal void, landing with a graceless thud in the lush, verdant landscape of 1600 Ireland. And true to form, I was as naked as the day I was born. Brilliant, I thought. Nothing says, "Welcome to the 17th century" like a brisk Irish breeze where the sun doesn't shine. The first order of business, as always, was finding something to cover up my 21st century modesty, or lack thereof. Scrambling around, I managed to fashion a makeshift kilt from what I hoped was a discarded piece of cloth, and not someone's lost sheep. "When in Ireland," I quipped to myself, "do as the Scots do?" Historical accuracy wasn't exactly my forte at the moment. As I tiptoed through the countryside, trying not to attract too much attention or step on anything sharp, I couldn't help but wonder if Morgan Le Fay would make an appearance. After all, she was the puppet master behind my involuntary time-hopping. "What are the odds she's around here waiting to critique my kilt?" I mused, half expecting her to pop out from behind a tree with fashion advice from the Dark Ages. But there was no time to ponder the whereabouts of legendary enchantresses. I had a mission. Morgan's curse wasn't just about giving me a highly unconventional travel bug. It threatened my family tree. To thwart her plans, I needed to find my ancestors, a task made slightly easier by my gut's uncanny ability to rumble in the presence of familial connections. Wandering into the nearest village, I tried to blend in, which was about as easy as a polar bear trying to mingle at a penguin party. That's when I felt it, a familiar rumbling in my bowels as I locked eyes with a ruggedly handsome chap arguing with a feisty woman over the price of a cow. "Ah, there you are," I sighed, the rumbling intensifying as if to say, "Bingo." Now the trick was getting these two lovebirds together without alarming them or the entire village. Approaching them, I cleared my throat and mustered my best Irish accent, which, to be honest, probably sounded more like a leprechaun with a cold. "Excuse me, good folks. Have you considered the benefits of matrimonial bliss? It's much better than cow haggling, I assure you." Their confused stares were a clear indicator of my failing eloquence. Just as I was about to attempt a more refined approach, a chicken, perhaps offended by my intrusion, decided to launch an aerial assault, targeting my head with precision only nature could bestow. As I danced around trying to fend off my feathered attacker, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of my situation. Here I was, a naked time traveler turned impromptu matchmaker, fighting off poultry in 17th century Ireland, all in a day's work to save my lineage from a spiteful sorceress. "Ah, Morgan," I chuckled, dodging another kamikaze chicken. "You really outdid yourself this time, but it's going to take more than poultry and wardrobe malfunctions to stop me." With determination, a makeshift kilt, and now a chicken as my nemesis, I set about my task, ready to face whatever else this time period had in store. As I navigated the complexities of 1600 Ireland, my task suddenly seemed a lot more daunting. The two ancestors I needed to unite, Aidan O'Malley and Siobhan O'Doherty, were evidently not on the best of terms. Their families, the O'Malleys and the O'Dohertys, had been feuding for generations over a dispute so ancient, not even the oldest members of the village could remember what started it. Approaching Aidan with the suggestion of marriage to Siobhan was like proposing a truce between cats and dogs, utterly laughable. He looked at me as if I had suggested he marry the chicken that had previously launched an assault on my dignity. "Marry her?" Aidan laughed, the sound tinged with disbelief. "I'd sooner kiss a pig. The O'Dohertys and the O'Malleys are like oil and water, fire and ice. We don't mix, especially not through marriage." Siobhan, on the other hand, was not amused by my proposition or Aidan's reaction. Growing up together had done nothing to soften their views on the age-old family feud. If anything, it seemed to have cemented their mutual disdain. Her response to the marriage idea was swift and decisive, a slap that echoed through the village square, leaving Aidan with a red mark to match his flushed face. "You're as daft as you look, thinking I'd ever marry into that sorry excuse of a family," she seethed, her fiery spirit leaving no room for doubt about her feelings. Standing there, amidst the fallout of my failed matchmaking attempt, I couldn't help but wonder if Morgan Le Fay had set me up for failure from the start. Here I was, a naked, now partially clothed, time traveler, trying to mend centuries-old feuds with nothing but a rumbling belly and a dubious understanding of Irish family politics. The more they argued, the more it became clear that my mission was about as likely to succeed as me, finding a decent pair of trousers in this era. Aidan and Siobhan's spat escalated, drawing a crowd that seemed more entertained than concerned. It was like watching a live performance of Romeo and Juliet, if Romeo and Juliet absolutely despised each other. As I backed away from the scene, narrowly avoiding another airborne attack from my chicken adversary, I realized that this was going to be a lot harder than I thought. Not only did I have to find a way to bring Aidan and Siobhan together, but I also had to navigate the treacherous waters of their family's feud. And so, with a disgruntled chicken in tow, and my dignity hanging by a thread, I set off to devise a new plan. One that would require all the wit, charm, and sheer luck I could muster. Because in the game of ancestral matchmaking, it's not just about making connections. It's about rewriting history, one bumbling attempt at a time. Embarking on my mission to untangle the Gordian knot of bovine proportions that was the O'Malley and O'Doherty feud, I discovered the cause of centuries of strife was, frankly, utterly ridiculous. It all started over a cow, or more accurately, a pint of milk. Yes, these two families had been at loggerheads for generations because someone apparently got too handsy with the dairy cow. You can't make this stuff up. Well, unless you're me, and then making things up is part of the daily grind. So, armed with this knowledge and a sense of humor drier than a well-cooked turkey, I concocted a plan so absurd it just might work. The inaugural Great Cow Reconciliation Festival. Because nothing says, let's bury the hatchet like celebrating the very creature that started the war. was like hosting a family reunion and inviting the elephant in the room to be the guest of honor. The festival was a hodgepodge of hastily thrown together cow-themed decorations and the promise of free cheese, which, as everyone knows, is the universal peace offering. I announced the main event, a milk drinking contest between Aiden, lactose-intolerant O'Malley, and Siobhan. I thought this was almond milk O'Doherty. The idea was to see who could stomach their family pride, literally, by chugging milk. Because nothing says reconciliation like potential gastrointestinal distress in front of your entire village. As they squared off, with a jug of milk that looked suspiciously enthusiastic about its role in peace negotiations, I realized that I might have just stumbled upon the most bizarre method of conflict resolution in history. "Folks," I declared, "may the best stomach win." The contest was less a display of dairy prowess and more a lesson in why milk chugging should never become an Olympic sport. Aiden and Siobhan, faces as white as the milk they were downing, looked like they were reconsidering every life choice that led them to this moment. Meanwhile, the crowd, a mix of O'Malleys and O'Dohertys, found common ground in their shared horror and amusement at the spectacle. In the end, Siobhan emerged victorious, her victory speech drowned out by the sounds of the crowd's laughter and Aiden's vows to switch to oat milk. The absurdity of the situation, their ancestors' feud culminating in a milk-drinking contest, struck a chord. There, amid the spilled milk and belly laughs, the families found their truce. The Great Cow Reconciliation Festival would go down in history, not just as the day the feud ended, but as proof that when it comes to family disputes, sometimes you just need to take a step back, pour yourself a glass of milk and ask, "Are we really going to let a cow come between us?" As I basked in the glow of my triumph, a strange noise drew me towards the spring. There, in a scene that would make even the most stoic of poets swoon, were Aiden and Siobhan, washing away the remnants of our dairy debacle. Their argument had apparently churned into something sweeter, as they suddenly began making out like two teenagers who had just discovered the concept of lips. And as if the universe itself was giving me a thumbs up, Siobhan's belly emitted a soft glow, a telltale sign that the future O'Malley-O'Doherty lineage was secure, thanks to yours truly. Just then, my bowels chimed in with their own version of a standing ovation, signaling it was time to bid adieu to 1600 Ireland. Scanning the area for a makeshift privy, I opted for the classic behind-a-tree approach. But as fate would have it, my feathery nemesis, the chicken, saw this as the perfect opportunity for revenge. Just as I was about to be whooshed back to the present, it launched itself at me with the fury of 1,000 suns. Whoosh! Back in the office bathroom, the chicken somehow managed to hitch a ride through time, continuing its assault on my head as I made my grand re-entrance onto the toilet. The squawks and flaps echoed off the tile, creating a discord that surely sparked curiosity and concern among my colleagues. Outside, the sounds of battle raged on. "Get off me, you feathered fiend!" I shouted, dodging pecks and claws while trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. From the other side of the door, confused murmurs and stifled laughter could be heard. Is Charlie fighting a chicken in there?" someone whispered, the disbelief in their voice mirroring my own thoughts exactly. The scuffle continued, with the chicken proving to be a formidable opponent, undeterred by my pleas for peace. In a desperate attempt to end the aerial assault, I grabbed a hand towel, waving it like a flag of truce. "Ceasefire! Ceasefire!" I cried, hoping to broker a deal with my poultry adversary. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the chicken's resolve waned, and it retreated, leaving me victorious yet utterly exhausted. I emerged from the bathroom, feathers in my hair and a wild look in my eyes, to a hallway filled with bewildered co-workers. "Charlie, were you just fighting a chicken in the bathroom?" my boss asked, trying and failing to mask his amusement. "Long story," I sighed, adjusting my tie and attempting to regain some composure. "Let's just say it's been a rough day at the office." As whispers and giggles filled the office, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of my situation. Only I could turn a simple trip to the bathroom into an epic saga involving time travel, ancient feuds, and a chicken with a vendetta. So, as I settled back into the rhythm of office life, I made a mental note to maybe lay off the experimental breakfast for a while. After all, it's not every day one gets to fight a chicken in a corporate restroom, and frankly, once is more than enough for me. As the dust settled on what would forever be known in office lore as the Great Chicken Bathroom Brawl of 2024, a new mystery emerged: the case of the disappearing chicken. Despite my valiant tales of foul combat, a thorough search of the bathroom revealed no trace of my feathered foe. No chicken, nothing. It was as if the bird had vanished into thin air, or more accurately, into the ductwork. I swear, as I tried to explain the poultry poltergeist to my incredulous co-workers, I could hear it. The faint, unmistakable sound of pecking and the soft, menacing clucks echoing through the air vents. It was as if the chicken, unsatisfied with our unresolved duel, was biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to launch another surprise attack. "Charlie, are you sure you're okay?" my colleague asked, eyeing me with a mix of concern and barely suppressed laughter. "Maybe you hit your head during the, incident." "No, I'm telling you, it's in the ductwork," I insisted, pointing to the ceiling as if the chicken might suddenly drop down for a dramatic reveal. But all I got were nods and sympathetic smiles, the universal office language for, "We think you've lost it, but it's Monday, so we'll let it slide." But I knew better. Every rustle, every whisper of air passing through the vents sent me into high alert. I found myself glancing upwards, half expecting to see a beady-eyed chicken peering down at me, plotting its next move. The office, once a sanctuary of mundane workday routine, had transformed into a battleground where man and bird could once again clash in an epic showdown. I could almost hear its taunts, the soft clucking that seemed to say, "This isn't over, Charlie. You and me were destined to dance this dance of destiny until the end of time, or at least until one of us gets relocated to another branch." As the days passed, the chicken became my phantom adversary, its presence felt but never seen, a constant reminder of the unpredictable nature of my life. My colleagues, meanwhile, took to leaving rubber chickens on my desk, a tribute to my invisible nemesis and a new source of office amusement. And so I carried on, wary of air vents and the sounds of unseen poultry. The chicken in the ductwork, whether real or a figment of my post-time travel stress, had become a part of my daily life, a reminder that adventure, and possibly poultry, could be lurking around any corner. Ah, Turdettes, bless your hearts for sticking around through the lunacy that is my life. Until our next encounter, dear chicken, I remain on guard, forever vigilant and slightly paranoid. Because in the world of Turd Yssey's, even the most ordinary day can turn into an extraordinary tale of time travel, ancient feuds, and bathroom brawls with chickens. I do also worry about your turdettes. Every chapter I throw at you is a wild concoction of historical mishaps, culinary disasters, and, let's be honest, a bit too much information about my bowel movements. And yet, here you are, ready for more. Is it the thrill of the unknown, the promise of a good chuckle, or are you all just hoping to see what bizarre situation I'll find myself in next? I'd wager it's a mix of all three. So, dear turdettes, keep your expectations low and your sense of humor ready. There's no telling where or when we'll end up next, but I promise you two things. It'll be absurd, and you'll get to see history through the eyes of someone who can't seem to stay put in the present. Here's to the adventures that lie ahead. May they be as enlightening as they are embarrassing. Yours in time travel and occasional chicken warfare, Charlie out. Welcome, turdettes, to the latest dispatch from the front lines of my life, a saga that continues to unfold with the unpredictability of a soap opera penned by a committee of time-traveling comedians. Let's dive into the curious case of my existence, shall we? Where culinary experiments double as potential time machines, and relationships are tested by the whims of my digestive tract. Ah, the gastronomic time machine, my trusty, crumb-speckled companion on this journey through time and space, and questionable dietary choices. This food journal of mine, a tome so hefty it could double as a doorstop or a makeshift weapon, stands as a testament to my culinary curiosity and my unwavering dedication to solving the mystery of my time-traveling bowels. Imagine, if you will, a diary filled to the brim with the most bewildering array of meals, a veritable smorgasbord of desperation and late-night snacking. From the half-eaten slice of pizza found languishing in the fridge, a relic of a bygone era, or so it tasted, to the ambitious experiment involving ramen noodles and a dubious packet of seasoning that claimed to be chicken-flavored, it lied. Every entry is a potential clue in the ongoing investigation of my digestive system's penchant for historical escapades. The quest for understanding has led me down some dark culinary alleys. There was the great hot sauce incident of last Tuesday, where I, in a moment of hubris, doused my dinner with a sauce that promised to be mild, but was, in fact, a liquid inferno. My subsequent time-traveling jaunt to the Ice Age was not, as one might think, a welcome relief. Let's just say mammoths are not equipped to deal with spicy, food-induced panic. And who could forget the mystery meat adventure, a daring foray into the world of canned goods that left me wondering whether I'd eaten beef, chicken, or something entirely new to science. My journey that night to a medieval banquet was eye-opening. Turns out, when faced with a dubious stew, my ancestors were just as likely to push it around their plates and hope for the best. Don't worry, that is about all you're missing on those trips they were straightforward with. Hello, how do you do? Bam. Now I pronounce you as a couple. Now create me. Truly boring trips. Yet, for all its trials and tribulations, the gastronomic time machine has been a source of endless fascination rather than a curse. Each entry, a snapshot of culinary bravery, or foolishness depending on who you ask, brings me closer to understanding the link between what I eat and where, or when, I end up. It's a puzzle wrapped in an enigma, smothered in secret sauce and served with a side of fries, because let's be honest, fries are always a good idea. So, as I continue to chart my way through the gastronomic galaxy, armed only with a fork and an unshakable sense of optimism, I invite you, dear Turdettes, to continue with me on this journey. Together, we'll explore the mysteries of the universe, one questionable meal at a time. Who knows? Perhaps the secret to unlocking the mysteries of time travel lies not in the stars, but in a takeout container of leftover Chinese food. Here's to the next mouthful and the next adventure. May our appetites be hearty, our stomachs strong, and our time machines ever ready to whisk us away to the next culinary conundrum. Bon appetit. Now let's talk about love in the time of temporal displacement. Ah, love in the time of temporal displacement. A narrative thread so complex it could rival the plot of a telenovela. Samantha, the ever-patient heroine of this subplot, has endured more than her fair share of my temporal eccentricities. Her skepticism, a seed planted on our very first date, has grown into a towering oak of disbelief, nurtured by my all-too-frequent absences and bizarre explanations. Picture this. Our first date. A candlelit dinner that promised the beginning of something beautiful. The mood was perfect, the conversation flowed, and then, as if on cue from a mischievous universe, I felt the now familiar rumble. Excusing myself, I vanished into the restroom, only to be whisked away on an unplanned journey through time. Samantha, left alone at the table until the restaurant's closing time, was forced to pay for our uneaten meal and wait, bewildered and increasingly irritated by my car. When I finally reappeared, an hour after the restaurant had closed, her relief at seeing me was quickly overshadowed by confusion and a growing suspicion. I explained everything then, about my time-traveling bowels, how it had happened once before, and the wild adventures that ensued. To my surprise, Samantha forgave me, and our relationship blossomed from there. But the seed of doubt had been planted, watered by each subsequent disappearance and outlandish tale. The arrow wound incident was particularly hard to explain. How could I convince her that I had indeed traveled back to the time of Genghis Khan, where a misunderstanding led to me taking an arrow to the arm, only to be treated with the rudimentary medical care of the time? Samantha's incredulity was palpable, her questions probing, and yet a part of her wanted to believe in the incredible adventures I recounted. but the strain on her willingness to suspend disbelief grew with each tale. The picnic abandonment was nearly the straw that broke the camel's back. Vanishing into thin air from a peaceful park outing was one thing, but returning to find her on the verge of leaving, frustration etched into her features, was quite another. Since then, our relationship has navigated rocky terrain, each moment of joy shadowed by the fear of another unexpected departure. Yet hope springs eternal, and I, ever the optimist, have concocted a plan to mend the fraying edges of our bond. A food truck festival. Yes, Turdette. What better way to celebrate and reinforce our connection than amidst a cornucopia of culinary delights? It's a gesture, a promise of normalcy, and an attempt to create new, happy memories untainted by the specter of my curse. This festival represents more than just an array of gastronomic wonders. It's a symbol of my commitment to Samantha, a demonstration that, despite the chaos that seems to follow me, she remains my anchor, my constant in a sea of temporal instability. It's my way of saying, yes, my life may be a whirlwind of unexpected journeys and historical hijinks, but at the center of it all is you. So, as we gear up for a day of delicious eats and shared experiences, I hold on to the hope that this can be a turning point for us, a chance to laugh, love, and maybe, just maybe, convince Samantha that a life with me, time-traveling bowels and all, is worth the wild ride. Here's to love, laughter, and the healing power of street food. Yours in culinary courtship and hopeful reconciliation. Then you have the feline overlord and the phantom chicken. In the saga of my life, where time itself bends to the whims of my intestinal fortitude, there lies a subplot so filled with intrigue and feline machinations, it could very well merit its own spin-off. Enter Pharaoh, the four-legged monarch of my modest abode, whose contempt for my temporal escapades knows no bounds. His vengeance, silent yet devastating, unfolds in acts of cunning retribution only a creature of his intellect could devise. Act 1. The case of the mysteriously moved objects. It began subtly with items of importance, keys, wallet, that one sock you need to complete a pair, mysteriously relocating to realms unknown. After days of frustration, the culprit was unveiled in a dramatic flourish. Pharaoh perched atop the refrigerator, batting my possessions into the shadowy abyss behind it with the precision of a skilled pool player. His message was clear. Leave, and your earthly belongings shall journey to the land of lost things. Act 2. The Great Bathroom Caper. Never one to shy away from escalating tensions, Pharaoh embarked on a mission to conquer the one sanctuary I believed safe from his machinations, the bathroom. Shower curtains, once mere barriers to water, became his canvas, clawed into abstract masterpieces. Toilet paper rolls, unwound in a frenzy, transformed the floor into a winter wonderland of white. And as I stepped into this scene of chaos, I found him sitting amidst the destruction, his gaze saying, "Consider this a warning shot across the bow." Act 3. The Siege of the Laundry Basket. In his most daring feat yet, Pharaoh launched an all-out assault on the laundry basket, turning clean clothes into a veritable fur-coated fortress. Each garment, carefully laundered, was now imbued with the essence of Pharaoh, a reminder that nothing in this home was beyond his reach. His message was clear. Your absence has consequences, and they are fluffy. Yet, it was his growing suspicion of my late-night forays into his food stash that truly marked the zenith of his campaign. With the stealth of a seasoned detective, he began to monitor his food supply with an eagle eye, counting cans, noting discrepancies. The moment of realization came one night as he caught me in the act, his gourmet feast halfway to my guilty mouth. The look he gave me was one of betrayal so profound, it could have inspired Shakespeare to pen a tragedy. "Et tu, human?" His eyes seemed to accuse, as I stood frozen, caught in the act of culinary theft. Don't knock it till you have tried it, moving on. His retribution was swift and merciless. Favorite pens, mysteriously chewed, shoes mysteriously missing, and in a final act of defiance, my pillow, now mysteriously damp. Each act a silent testament to his displeasure, a feline's way of saying, "Your adventures cost us both, but I, dear Turd Yssey, shall pay the heftier price." And so as I navigate the treacherous waters of time travel and the curse of Morgan Le Fay, I do so knowing that back home a ruler awaits, ready to exact his toll for my absences and indiscretions. Pharaoh, the true master of my fate, the keeper of my sanity, and the silent judge of my every action. In the chronicles of Charlie's Turd Yssey, let it be known, no adventure is complete without the tacit approval of the feline overlord, whose schemes and plots remind me that, no matter where in time I find myself, home is where the cat is, judging, plotting, and ever waiting. Yours in domestic diplomacy and feline forgiveness. And then there's the chicken, my feathered arch-nemesis, whose presence in my life has become as haunting as the ticking of Poe's infamous telltale heart. Ah, Turd Yssey, gather round as I recount the tale of the phantom chicken, a story so steeped in suspense and poultry paranoia, it could very well have been plucked from the pages of Poe himself. Yes, Edgar Allan Poe, if he had a penchant for office-based, chicken-centric Gothic tales. Once upon a midnight dreary, as I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, namely, the inscrutable scribbles of my food journal, I heard a sound, not a gentle tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door, but a soft, sinister clucking, emanating from the ductwork above. This clucking, faint yet unmistakable, set my heart to pounding, my palms to sweating. It was not the wind, I assured myself, nor the settling of the ancient building housing our modern-day office. No, this was the sound of my nemesis, the phantom chicken, returned from the annals of time to haunt me, to taunt me, to drive me to the brink of madness. Day by day the clucking grew louder, more insistent, a constant peck, pecking at the edges of my sanity. My colleagues observed my growing distress with a mixture of concern and bewildered amusement, whispering among themselves as I cast wary glances toward the ceiling, awaiting the next ghostly cluck from my feathered foe. "Are you quite all right, Charlie?" they'd ask, their voices tinged with a skepticism that suggested they found my plight more amusing than alarming. "Hearing chickens in the ductwork again?" I'd nod, my eyes wide, my voice a mere whisper. "It's there, lurking, waiting, plotting its next move," I'd say, my words met with raised eyebrows and barely suppressed chuckles. And so, I found myself caught in a tale of woe and foul, a story that might have amused Poe himself. A tale of a man tormented by a chicken, its spectral presence a constant reminder of a curse that bound us across time and space. With every cluck, every rustle, every imagined flap of its ghostly wings, I felt the grip of poultry-induced panic tighten. At night, I'd lie awake, the silence of the dark hours broken only by the distant sound of clucking, as if the chicken were pacing the ductwork, rehearsing its next assault. The sound became my heartbeat, a relentless rhythm that echoed my every step, a telltale cluck that I feared would be my undoing. Was it real, or had my mind, twisted by the curse of Morgan Le Fay and the trials of time travel, conjured this avian apparition to torment me? Was I doomed to a life haunted by the ghost of poultry past, forever looking over my shoulder for a chicken that may or may not exist? Ah, but therein lies the rub, Turd Yssey. For in the world of time travel, curses, and culinary misadventures, the line between reality and madness is as thin as the membrane of an eggshell, easily cracked, spilling its secrets like so many yolks upon the floor of reason. So, I beseech you, dear readers, as you follow the twisted path of my Turd Yssey, remember the phantom chicken, not as a mere figment of a fevered imagination, but as a symbol of the absurdities that life, in all its strange and wondrous forms, can throw our way. Yours in feathered folly and Gothic melodrama, this chicken, a nemesis birthed from a moment of time-traveling madness, has become the Poe to my sanity, a constant clucking reminder of my curse. Its presence lingers in the ductwork, a ghostly poultry presence that turns each workday into an episode of The Twilight Zone, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. The birds was mere child's play compared to the psychological warfare waged by this single, determined chicken. Together, Pharaoh and the phantom chicken form the perfect storm of domestic and workplace chaos, a duo that keeps me on my toes and my life interesting, to say the least. While one judges me with the disdain only a cat can muster, the other lurks in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to remind me that no matter how bizarre my life gets, it can always get stranger. So, as I navigate the twin challenges of appeasing a gourmet-loving cat and evading an avian ghost, I can't help but laugh at the absurdity of my situation. After all, who needs enemies when you have a judgmental cat and a chicken that refuses to be forgotten? Here's to hoping the next chapter of my Turd Yssey brings fewer culinary betrayals and more peaceable poultry encounters. But who am I kidding? With my luck, I'll be lucky to make it through the week without offending another historical figure or discovering a new, unwanted pet hiding in my pantry. So here we stand, dear Turdettes, at the crossroads of absurdity and enlightenment. My life, a tapestry woven from threads of confusion, culinary misadventures, and interspecies rivalries, continues to unravel in the most unpredictable ways. Through it all, I remain your faithful narrator, ever ready to share the next chapter of this bewildering journey. As we look to the horizon, wondering where the winds of fate and digestion will carry us next, remember, in the grand sitcom of life, laughter is the best medicine, especially when the alternative is being outsmarted by poultry. Stay tuned, Turdettes, for what promises to be another roller coaster ride through the annals of history and the mysteries of the human and feline heart. Who knows what the future holds, but one thing's for certain, it's bound to be a hoot, or at the very least, a cluck. Yours in perpetual amusement and slight confusion, Charlie out. Ah, Turdettes, gather round as I regale you with the latest chapter in the ongoing saga of Charlie's Turd Yssey. It's a tale of love, jealousy, and the ever-elusive phantom rooster, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. First off, let's talk about Samantha and me. After the whole oops, I accidentally abandoned you in the park while I time-traveled fiasco, you'll be thrilled to know that Samantha has graciously forgiven me. We celebrated our truce in style at a food truck festival, an event so epic in its culinary delights that we couldn't possibly review it for our newly minted segment, Couples Turd Yssey. There were just too many mouth-watering options, and, let's be honest, when faced with the prospect of tacos versus Thai, who can choose? Next time, we vow to focus on just a few trucks for a fair review. But don't hold your breath. Decisions are not our strong suit. Now, on to Pharaoh, the real ruler of our roost. The furry overlord has been less than pleased with the recent developments. Whether it's the time I've been spending away from home or the thrilling adventures he's missed out on, I can't say. But one thing is crystal clear. Pharaoh has developed a rather conspicuous affection for Samantha. Whenever she comes over, it's as if I cease to exist. The cat, in a display of feline charm turned up to 11, monopolizes all her attention with an arsenal of tactics only the most cunning of cats could devise. He's turned wooing Samantha into an art form, deploying everything from strategic purring to acrobatic feats of cuteness. And let me tell you, watching Pharaoh curl up in Samantha's lap, receiving belly rubs like some sort of Roman emperor, is a sight to behold. The audacity! He even has the gall to push me away with one dismissive paw as we attempt to watch TV, claiming Samantha's affection as his rightful domain. The nerve of that cat. I find myself grappling with an emotion I never thought I'd feel. Jealousy. Jealousy of my own cat. If this were a sitcom, I'd be the laugh track's best friend. And as if domestic intrigue weren't enough, there's the matter of the phantom rooster at work. Though I haven't seen our feathered antagonist recently, I can feel his beady little eyes on me, stalking me through the air vents with the patience of a predator. It's like living in a low-budget horror movie where the monster is, well, poultry. Every rustle, every shadow has me on edge, wondering if today's the day the rooster decides to make his dramatic reappearance. I swear if I start finding feathers in my desk drawers, I'm calling an exorcist, or at least a really determined pest control specialist. So, in a twist that could only happen to yours truly, Samantha, ever the supportive yet increasingly skeptical partner, decides it's high time I saw a specialist about my, unique condition. It's just a routine checkup, she says, with the kind of optimism usually reserved for people who haven't accidentally time-traveled via bowel movement. Next thing I know, I'm booked for a colonoscopy. Yes, Turd Yssey, a colonoscopy. The final frontier. Now, I'm not one to shy away from adventure, but the prospect of this particular journey had me breaking out in a cold sweat. The preparation for the procedure involved something called Galvolite G, a concoction I'm convinced was brewed in the depths of Hades' own kitchen. The mere act of picking up the package from the pharmacy sent shivers down my spine, its label glaring at me like the harbinger of doom. I swear, I could feel the bottle chuckling ominously as I carried it home, a sinister "muahaha" echoing with each step. Over the next 5 days, the anticipation built. The bottle of Galvolite G seemed to follow me with its gaze, whispering dark promises of the chaos to come. I found myself eyeing it warily, half expecting it to leap off the counter and chase me around the house in a scene straight out of a horror movie. Then came the day before the procedure, the day of reckoning. The instructions were simple yet terrifying. Consume 1 16-ounces glass of Galvolite G every 15 minutes until half the bottle was gone. No food, just me and this demonic brew, a liquid curse designed to purge the very soul from one's body. As I unscrewed the cap, the faint scent of its malevolence wafted out, and I steeled myself for what was to come. In a desperate attempt to distract myself from the impending doom, I turned to my food journal, flipping through pages of my culinary misadventures. There, amidst the scribbles and stains, were entries that read like a mad scientist's grocery list. Chili cheese dog topped with sauerkraut and whipped cream, leftover sushi pizza, and bacon-wrapped bananas drizzled with hot sauce. As I pondered these questionable choices, a thought struck me. Where might these gastronomic grenades send me on the eve of my colonoscopy? With a sense of impending dread, I began the Galvolite G challenge, each gulp an act of bravery, or madness, depending on your perspective. As the minutes ticked by, I waited for the potion to work its dark magic, half expecting to be whisked away to some distant land or era where the concept of colonoscopy prep was blissfully unknown. Would the combination of Galvolite G and my recent diet propel me to ancient Rome, where I could share tales of modern medical practices with a bemused Galen? Or perhaps to the court of Louis XIV, where I could regale the Sun King with stories of a future where men willingly drink potions for the sake of health? The possibilities were as endless as they were horrifying. As I braced myself for the unknown, one thing was clear. This was going to be one for the history books, or at least one hell of a story, I think. After the initial anticlimactic encounter with the devil's own brew, which I've affectionately dubbed Lucifer's laxative, I found myself emboldened by the false sense of security it provided. Perhaps it's a gentle primer, I mused, convinced the real tempest would only be unleashed with the second act of this digestive drama. With hours to spare before the next round with Lucifer's laxative, I seized the opportunity for normalcy and sought out Samantha for an impromptu stroll. Her puzzled expression was a mirror to my own internal skepticism. "Aren't you supposed to be, I don't know, near a toilet or something?" she inquired, her tone laced with a mix of concern and incredulity. I waved off her worries with the expertise of a seasoned time traveler, or so I like to think. "It's all part of the process," I assured her, spinning my dubious theory of the two-part system. The calm before the storm, you might say. And so, hand in hand, we ventured out, blissfully unaware of the impending whirlwind I had inadvertently invited. The world was serene, the air fresh with the promise of spring, and for a moment, everything was perfect. Then, without warning, that all too familiar sensation hit me like a freight train. My body tensed, a bead of sweat traced its way down my forehead, and my grip on Samantha's hand became a vice. Samantha's eyes widened in alarm as she witnessed the transformation, my sudden pallor a stark contrast to the serene setting. "Charlie, what's—" Her words were cut short, as reality itself seemed to warp, the serene park morphing into a blur of colors and sensations, everything moving in reverse at a breakneck speed. And then, as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. Found ourselves not on the tranquil streets near Samantha's home, but in a scene from history so vivid, so real, it was undeniable. We were standing in the heart of a bustling medieval market, the air filled with the sounds of commerce and the smells of a bygone era. And true to the unique rules of our time travel, we were, indeed, as unencumbered by clothing as the day we were born. The shock on Samantha's face mirrored my own, a mix of disbelief and dawning realization. Here we were, together in the past, a shared experience that transcended any previous misadventure I'd embarked on alone. The absurdity of our situation, the vulnerability of it, somehow transformed into a moment of unparalleled clarity. "Welcome to time travel," I managed to say, trying to inject a note of humor into our predicament. The look Samantha gave me was one I'd never forget, a cocktail of awe, irritation, and a hint of the adventurous spirit that I'd fallen for. As we scrambled to find cover, our shared predicament became the ultimate bonding experience, far removed from any conventional date night. Here, in this slice of history, we were explorers, partners in time, navigating the intricacies of a world neither of us were prepared for. The journey back to our own time would require wit, luck, and perhaps a bit more understanding of the mechanics behind my time-traveling bowels. But for now, we had each other, and an adventure that would undoubtedly top any story for our couple's Turd Yssey segment, if we ever made it back to tell the tale. In the grand tradition of Charlie and Samantha's excellent adventures, our sudden jaunt into the annals of history found us in the rather pressing predicament of being, well, stark naked. Not exactly the most dignified way to make a historical entrance, but when has dignity ever been a part of these escapades? With a resourcefulness born of necessity and a keen desire to avoid public indecency charges, temporal laws notwithstanding, we managed to scrounge up some era-appropriate attire from a conveniently unattended clothesline. "Look at us, blending in like true time travelers," I quipped, my ensemble a questionable mix of medieval chic and desperate tourist. As we navigated the bustling streets trying not to look too out of place, Samantha bombarded me with questions. "So, that really was an arrow wound? And you fought in the Battle of Waterloo?" Her amazement was evident, each question underscored with a growing realization that she might have underestimated the veracity of my tales. "Oh, yes," I replied with all the nonchalance of a seasoned time traveler. "And let's not forget Pharaoh's valiant charge against the Neanderthals. A true feline warrior, that one." The look on Samantha's face was a priceless mixture of awe and, "Are you pulling my leg?" But it was the mention of Morgan Le Fay that truly sent her into a whirlwind of shock and curiosity. "You mean to tell me that all those stories, they're real? She cursed your family tree?" Samantha's mind raced with the implications, her previous skepticism crumbling in the face of our current reality. In her newfound zeal, Samantha began scouring our surroundings for the infamous sorceress, as if Morgan might just be casually strolling through the marketplace. "I don't think she's here," I explained, trying to temper her expectations. "Morgan's not exactly the type to keep tabs on us in person. She's more of a curse from afar kind of gal." Just as Samantha seemed to accept the situation, a dreadful thought struck me, the inevitable return to our time. "You do realize," I began, the words heavy with the weight of impending doom, "that our re-entry might be a bit messy. The memories of past returns, each marked by let's say an urgent evacuation, flashed before my eyes. Samantha waved off my warning with a roll of her eyes. Yeah, I get it. You're going to shit yourself. But look at this place, Charlie. It's incredible. Her enthusiasm for our historical surroundings momentarily eclipsed the looming specter of our return journey. And so, armed with borrowed clothes and a burgeoning appreciation for the complexities of time travel, we explored our temporary home in history, marveling at the sights and sounds of a world long gone. For a brief moment, the fears and concerns of the future and the present faded into the background, overshadowed by the wonder of our shared adventure. As Samantha and I basked in the wonder of our shared adventure, navigating through the bustling streets of history, she nudged me, her voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and annoyance. Who's that guy who's been tailing us? I've seen him at the blacksmith's, the market, and even mimicking your atrocious attempt at juggling apples. I glanced in the direction Samantha pointed, expecting perhaps a time-traveling tourist or a particularly nosy local. Instead, the sight of the man triggered the all-too-familiar rumble in my stomach, the unmistakable signal of familial recognition. Well, it appears he and I share more than just a genetic code. We also seem to have the same impeccable taste in women, I quipped, attempting to lighten the mood. Samantha's expression remained unamused, her brows knitting together in a look that said, "This is really not the time, Charlie." She then launched into a recap of the peculiar rules governing my time travels, as if reciting from the world's most bizarre handbook. So you find the ancestors in your family tree by a signal in your stomach, and you have to get them back together, or it messes with your future. Like that time your facial features changed, which, by the way, I totally didn't notice, she recounted with a hint of skepticism. I nodded, remembering all too well the disconcerting experience of waking up with a slightly different nose. Ah, yes, the facial feature fiasco. A classic, I replied, trying to maintain a light tone. And let's not forget the little trip to the future where we swapped genders. Still scratching my head on that one. Samantha's eyes widened in realization. Right. And the success of reuniting them is confirmed by the female ancestor's belly glowing. So, how do we find the other relative? She asked, all business now, her mind racing to solve the puzzle before us. I shrugged, half-jokingly suggesting, why don't we just follow him around? Though by the looks of it, we'd end up walking in circles, chasing each other's tails. Rolling her eyes and letting out an exaggerated sigh that spoke volumes of her patience, or lack thereof, Samantha took the lead. No, we're not going to play Ring Around the Rosie with your ancestor. Watch and learn, Charlie. As she marched towards the man destined to play a pivotal role in my existence, I couldn't help but admire her determination. And, in an attempt to lighten the mood, I called out, "Hey, if you guys start talking about family trees, make sure to mention I'm a great catch. Comes with a time-traveling bonus package." Samantha shot me a look that perfectly blended affection with exasperation, a silent reminder of the unique challenges we faced as a couple unstuck in time. And so there we were, a modern woman confronting a man from the past, all in the name of preserving my future, a future that, thanks to Samantha's quick thinking and my time-traveling bowels, was looking brighter by the minute. As the plot thickens in our tale of time-crossed lovers and ancestors with questionable taste, Samantha made a discovery that would twist the narrative in an unexpected direction. The man, upon seeing us materialize out of thin air, had not been alarmed by the sudden appearance of two naked time travelers, but instead had been utterly smitten with Samantha. He was enamored by her beauty and what he perceived as her boldness to parade au naturel amongst the common folk, alongside what he described as an unremarkable-looking nude man. I couldn't let that jab at my physique go unchallenged. "Well, dear ancestor," I retorted with a blend of wounded pride and sarcasm, "you might want to take a long look in the mirror before casting aspersions. After all, you're partly responsible for this unremarkable physique." With that, I puffed up my chest and sucked in my belly, striking what I imagined to be an impressively statuesque pose. The look he gave me in response was 1 part confusion, 2 parts pity. It was clear he thought I had lost my mind. Without missing a beat, he extended an invitation to Samantha for dinner at his chateau, an offer she accepted with an enthusiasm that bypassed any semblance of a consultation with me. "We'd love to," she declared, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of the adventure. I stood there, mouth agape, as we began to follow our pompous, assiduously snobbish ancestor, who seemed to have eyes only for Samantha and a disdain for those he deemed peasants. As we trailed behind him, I couldn't help but marvel at the irony. "Can you believe this guy? My own flesh and blood, and he's got the nerve to be a pompous ass," I muttered under my breath to Samantha, who was too caught up in the novelty of our situation to pay my indignation much mind. The walk to the chateau was an exercise in humility and historical hilarity. Our ancestor waxed poetic about his estate, his wealth, and his station, all the while casting sidelong glances at Samantha and completely oblivious to my growing annoyance. "You know, in the future his kind of charm doesn't really age well," I whispered to her, hoping to inject a bit of 21st century perspective into the situation. As we approached the grandiose entrance of the chateau, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to dine with one of history's most insufferable characters, a man who, despite being a branch on my family tree, seemed more like a leaf I'd rather pluck off and toss into the wind. But as they say, keep your friends close and your ancestors who are smitten with your girlfriend closer, or something like that. So, turdettes, as we prepare to break bread, or more likely gnaw on some historically accurate leg of mutton, with my love-struck relative, one thing's for certain: the dinner conversation is bound to be as rich and spicy as the dishes were about to be served, I hope. As the evening unfolded, we found ourselves at the mercy of my ancestor, whom I've since dubbed Sir Reginald du Pomposity, a name that captured both his lofty station and his equally lofty sense of self-importance. Sir Reginald, owner of the chateau and collector of egos, seemed determined to charm Samantha away from me, continuing a trend that made me question my choices, or perhaps my own charm. "Why does everyone we meet try to steal her from me?" I mused, casting a sideways glance at Samantha, who seemed more preoccupied with the discomforts of the 16th century than with our host's advances. The dinner, set in the grand dining hall of the chateau, was an affair straight out of a movie, minus the Hollywood gloss that conveniently omits the less savory aspects of historical living. Samantha, now adorned in a 16th century puffy dress, lamented the lack of air conditioning and the general discomfort of period attire. "You know, the movies make this all seem so elegant and charming. They never mention the lack of air conditioning, or how wearing what feels like an entire sheep's worth of wool in this heat is less than pleasant," she observed, fanning herself with a hand that likely wished it were holding an ice-cold beverage instead of a goblet of tepid wine. The food, a curious array of dishes that looked as though they were concocted in the dark by a chef with a vendetta against the culinary arts, was surprisingly edible. "Looks can be deceiving," I quipped, eyeing a dish that seemed to be staring back at me. Though, in Sir Reginald's case, I believe the first impression was spot on. Ah, the food. The first course had been an adventure in itself, with one dish that looked like it had lost a battle with a blender, but surprisingly didn't taste half bad. As we braced ourselves for the second course, Sir Reginald continued his campaign of wooing, regaling Samantha with tales of valor and chivalry that seemed to bore her more than impress. She, in turn, continued to provide a running commentary on the discrepancies between cinematic portrayals and reality, much to my amusement. As Sir Reginald continued his relentless pursuit of Samantha's attention, blatantly ignoring my existence unless to highlight his own superiority. It was during this culinary and cultural critique that the second course was served, heralding the entrance of a figure who would shift the dynamics of the evening. My stomach rumbled, a signal as unmistakable as it was untimely, confirming the identity of our server as none other than my countless great-grandmother, a woman Sir Reginald referred to disdainfully as the lowest of all peasants. The irony of the situation was not lost on me. Here was Sir Reginald du Pomposity, attempting to dazzle Samantha with his wealth and status, while one of my own ancestors, a woman of humble origins and immense importance to my family tree, served our dinner accompanied by a jackass, a detail that added a comedic touch to the scene and served as a fitting metaphor for Sir Reginald himself. Looks like my family tree has its roots in both pompous aristocrats and hard-working peasants, I quipped to Samantha, who stifled a laugh at the juxtaposition. And as for Sir Reginald's attempts to woo you, I'd say he's got his work cut out for him, especially with competition like that jackass. Samantha shot me a playful glare, her earlier discomfort forgotten in the face of our shared amusement at the evening's absurdities. As for Sir Reginald, his efforts to win over Samantha fell on deaf ears, overshadowed by the far more intriguing narrative unfolding around us, one that involved my ancestors, a donkey, and the realization that history, for all its grandeur, had a sense of humor as twisted as my own. As the evening's entertainment unfurled before us, with Sir Reginald du Pomposity preening like a peacock, and my great-grandmother serving up a second course that looked suspiciously like medieval mystery meat, I was about as useful as a chocolate teapot in devising a plan to bring these two wildly mismatched souls together. Enter Samantha, the veritable MacGyver of social manipulation, armed with nothing but her wits and an uncanny ability to stir the pot, sometimes literally. Her strategy was so deviously simple, it bordered on genius. "Let's turn Sir Reginald's vanity into our secret weapon," she mused, with the kind of twinkle in her eye that usually preceded mayhem. The plan? A faux historical reenactment that would make even the most stoic Renaissance fair actor cringe. Sir Reginald, ever the fan of grandiose displays of his own perceived valor, leaped at the opportunity like a cat on a laser pointer. The battle was set to be a reenactment of some obscure skirmish that Samantha pulled out of thin air, with Sir Reginald cast as the hero, naturally. But here's the kicker. My great-grandmother was to be his advisor, a wise peasant woman whose sage advice was as genuine as a $3 bill. As the day of the reenactment dawned, the chateau grounds transformed into a scene that would have made Monty Python proud. Sir Reginald, decked out in armor that was more shine than substance, pranced about issuing commands with the authority of a man who had read one too many chivalry novels. Meanwhile, my great-grandmother, roped into this charade, dispensed strategic advice that was about as strategically sound as invading Russia in winter. Yet, to everyone's surprise, Sir Reginald hung on her every word, mesmerized by the novelty of a noble listening to a peasant without the intention of taxing them. The climax of the battle was less a display of martial prowess and more an exercise in slapstick comedy. Sir Reginald's valiant charge ended not with a clash of swords, but with him tripping over his own feet, a move so graceless it could only have been choreographed by the universe itself. Post-battle, as we gathered for dinner, the atmosphere was electric with the afterglow of our farcical foray into faux history. Sir Reginald, now thoroughly enchanted by my great-grandmother's wisdom, lavished attention upon her, proving that the path to a man's heart is through his ego, and perhaps a well-timed stumble. Samantha, watching her plan unfold with the satisfaction of a cat who got the cream, gave me a look that said, "Who needs time travel when you've got manipulation skills like these?" And me? I was just trying to wrap my head around the night's events. Here I was, worried about bridging centuries of social divide, and all it took was a fake battle, a bit of flattery, and a tumble to bring together an aristocrat and a peasant. Truly, if this dinner was any indication, the course of true love never did run smooth, especially when it's being orchestrated by a time-traveling couple with a penchant for historical hijinks and a dash of sarcasm. Ah, my beloved Turd Yssey, just when you thought the chronicles of my time-tumbling tomfoolery couldn't possibly get more absurd, enter the grand finale of what shall henceforth be known as the Night of the Glowing Ancestor and Lucifer's Laxative Catastrophe. A tale so fraught with embarrassment, it could only unfold in the life of yours truly. As Samantha's strategic genius bore fruit, quite literally, in the form of my many great-grandmother's belly emitting a glow bright enough to rival a discount store nightlight, I realized the moment of triumph had arrived. Eureka! I nearly shouted, ready to crown Samantha the queen of temporal matchmaking. But fate, with its twisted sense of timing, had other plans. No sooner had the glow confirmed our success than the dastardly concoction known as Lucifer's laxative decided to stage its grand performance. In the annals of history, there have been many dramatic exits, but none quite so explosive as mine in the literal aftermath of time travel. The orchestra of my bowels played a symphony of despair, a sound so profoundly tragic that it would have made Beethoven weep and reconsider the merits of silence. There's a time and place for everything, but this isn't it, I lamented, as Samantha and I found ourselves catapulted back to the present, the air around us filled with the echoes of my gastrointestinal regret. The mutual glance we shared was one of horror mixed with a dash of hilarity, because when you're time travelers fueled by questionable colonoscopy prep, what else can you do but laugh? Before we could even attempt to salvage what was left of our dignity, the cosmos spun the roulette wheel of time once again. At least in the past, there's no one to witness my current predicament, I joked, attempting to lighten the mood as history's carousel started up once more. Remember, if we land in the Victorian era, just tell them it's the latest fashion from France, I quipped, moments before we were whisked away, leaving behind nothing but the lingering aroma of my shame and a promise to myself to thoroughly read medical instructions in the future. And so, dear Turdettes, as I brace myself to recount the next chapter of this lavatory saga, I must first take a moment, a brief interlude, if you will, to mentally prepare myself, and perhaps consult a therapist about my new phobia of pharmacists and their potions. Stay tuned for part 2 of The Misadventures of Charlie and Lucifer's Laxative, where we dive headfirst into the bowels of history once more, seeking adventure, answers, and hopefully a very discreet restroom. Because in the world of time-traveling gastronomy, you never know when the past will come knocking, or in my case, when your colon decides it's time for a history lesson after drinking Lucifer's laxative. Yours in eternal embarrassment and sarcastic resilience, Charlie out. Welcome back, Turdettes, intrepid explorers of the absurd and aficionados of the gastrointestinal time travel conundrum. When we last left our heroes, yours truly, Charlie, and the ever-patient Samantha, they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death, public embarrassment due to Lucifer's laxative, to be precise, by the skin of their teeth and the whims of the time-space continuum. As luck, or perhaps fate, would have it, just as my bowels unleash havoc upon our return, the universe decided it wasn't quite done toying with us yet. And whoosh, off we went, saved by the bell, or in our case, a timely temporal tornado. You see, dear Turdettes, if our adventures were a TV show, this is the part where the screen goes black, and you're left wondering if someone sat on the remote. Fear not, for our story is far from over. In fact, it's just getting to the good part, assuming your definition of good includes unexpected nudity, questionable historical accuracy, and a healthy dose of digestive drama. As we stand, or more accurately plummet, on the precipice of yet another unplanned journey through history, I find myself pondering the essential questions of life. Will we ever find a time period with a sympathetic understanding of my unique condition? And most importantly, will Samantha and I manage to navigate the trials and tribulations of time travel without ending up on a medieval version of America's Most Wanted? Join us, if you dare, for the next chapter of Charlie and Samantha's not-so-excellent adventure, where the past is a mystery, the future is a gamble, and the present, well, let's just say it's complicated. Fasten your seatbelts and prepare for a dive into the unknown. Because in the world of time-traveling love stories, the only certainty is uncertainty. Landing butt-naked, typical, on a tropical paradise is how we kickstart this episode, and here we are, streaks on the sand, courtesy of Morgan Le Fay's cursed gastrointestinal time portal. First order of business? Checking for any remnants of Lucifer's laxative's last laugh. Miraculously, my pants crisis was averted. This time. Still, the thought of our return trip had me sweating more than a polar bear in a sauna. Samantha, in contrast, seemed to be living her best life, unfazed by our Adam and Eve cosplay. Her enthusiasm for our accidental nudist colony made me suspect she might just be a closeted naturist, thrilled by the prospect of communing with nature, sans clothing. Meanwhile, I'm fashioning the latest in fig leaf couture, pondering whether I missed my calling as a prehistoric fashion designer. Enter the island's inhabitants, who were less survivor castaways and more welcoming committee with an affinity for blonde hair. To them, Samantha was the embodiment of a sun-kissed deity, her blonde locks a beacon of divinity. Me? I was apparently the deity's awkward, less glowing companion, possibly a demigod of discomfort. In the quest to unite my ancestors on this picturesque island, where time seemed to laze along with the gentle ocean breeze, I found myself navigating a social maze that made high school look like preschool. My ancestors, it turned out, were the island's most eligible bachelor and bachelorette, except their romantic paths were more tangled than the vines in the jungle. With Samantha elevated to deity status, and thus rendered completely unavailable for practical assistance, I had to get creative. And by creative, I mean resorting to the kind of antics that would make a Shakespearean comedy look like a documentary. My plan? A love potion. But not just any love potion. No, this concoction was made from the island's most potent ingredients. Fermented coconut milk for courage, a dash of crushed pineapple for sweetness in their hearts, and the pièce de résistance, a single hair from Samantha's head, acquired during her divine slumbers, to seal the deal. After all, if they were seeking the goddess's blessing, what better way to get it than to literally weave her into their budding romance? As I mixed my brew with the finesse of a mad scientist at happy hour, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Was it ethical, meddling in the love lives of my ancestors, with a potion that smelled suspiciously like a tropical cocktail gone wrong? These moral quandaries, however, were quickly drowned out by the sight of Samantha being carried around on a makeshift throne, showered with flower petals and offerings of the island's finest fruits. Bottle in hand, I approached my ancestors under the guise of hosting a tasting session for the island's newest delicacy. A drink so divine it's been blessed by the goddess herself, I proclaimed, my sales pitch teetering on the edge of believability. The tasting was set against the backdrop of the island's most scenic waterfall, a location so breathtakingly beautiful it could turn even the most hardened cynic into a hopeless romantic. As they sipped the concoction, their eyes locked, and something miraculous happened. No, the skies didn't part, nor did angels sing, but my ancestors, a couple previously divided by whatever trivialities divide people on small islands, began to laugh. At first a chuckle, then a guffaw, until they were both doubled over, the potion apparently tickling more than just their taste buds. In their laughter, a connection was forged, the kind that could only be cemented by the shared experience of drinking something that tasted like a piña colada's distant, less successful cousin. The potion, it seemed, worked not through magic, but through the universal language of, "What in the world did we just drink?" As the laughter subsided and conversation blossomed, I took a step back, watching the magic of awkward first encounters unfold. Who knew matchmaking could be so intoxicating? I mused to myself, casting a glance toward Samantha, who was still being adored from afar. "Charlie, can't you see I'm busy being worshipped?" she called out, noticing my gaze. Her tone was playful, but the message was clear. I was on my own in this historical rom-com. As our tropical tale twisted like a vine in the island breeze, the newfound lovers, buoyed by the magic of my less-than-mystical concoction, sought the final piece to their love story's puzzle, the blessing of their blonde deity, Samantha. In an unexpected turn, Samantha, fully immersed in her role as the island's cherished goddess, faced a divine dilemma. Granting their wish would mean our immediate departure, an end to her reign of adoration among the islanders. With a heavy heart and a tinge of guilt I hadn't seen before, Samantha denied their union. "It's for the best," she assured them, casting me a glance that said, "I'm sorry, but have you seen how they pamper me here?" My ancestors, dejected yet still under the spell of their deity's wisdom, accepted her decision, their brief spark of romance extinguished like a torch in a tropical storm. Over the next few days, I launched a full-scale campaign to sway Samantha's divine decision. I tried logic. Think of the butterfly effect. Bribery. I'll get you a puppy. Emotional pleas. Remember our Netflix queue? And even emotional blackmail. Think of Pharaoh missing his human pillows. Yet each attempt crashed against the impenetrable fortress of Samantha's newfound deity status, like waves upon the shore. The island life had woven its way into her heart, and who could blame her? Breakfast in bed served on a leaf, a personal fan club that followed her every command, and the kind of weather that made you forget about the existence of winter. Meanwhile, I was starting to feel like a background character in Samantha's divine sitcom, occasionally thrown a sympathetic glance or a tropical fruit for my troubles. In a last-ditch effort, I formed the world's most primitive volleyball match. Picture this: a demigod, yours truly, and a deity, Samantha, rallying a coconut over a vine net with villagers who were probably placing bets on how long it'd take the pale, out-of-shape guy to pass out from heat stroke. Post-game, as we basked in the glow of our victory, and my impending heat exhaustion, Samantha finally caved. "All right, we'll help your ancestors, but only if you promise to build me a shrine back home, with air conditioning." Success. My ancestors, under the watchful eye of their newfound goddess, agreed to unite. And as their union was sealed with the world's first tropical disco ball, aka the glowing belly, Samantha and I prepared for our inevitable departure. Just when I was getting used to island life, Samantha sighed, as the familiar tug of time travel pulled at us. And I was just mastering the art of leaf couture, I lamented, casting one last longing glance at my fig leaf ensemble. As we braced for the journey back, a sense of déjà vu hit me. "Ready for another round of Lucifer's laxative roulette?" I joked, hoping the humor would mask my genuine dread. "Only if you promise to aim for the bushes this time," Samantha quipped, proving once again that when it comes to adventures through time and digestive disasters, she's the real MVP. With her statement, the euphoria of our successful island adventure faded. A shadow of dread began to creep over me. The joyful afterglow dimmed as the all-too-recent memory of Lucifer's laxative's calamitous aftermath flashed through my mind. Each triumphant return through time had been marred by an immediate, uncontrollable surrender to the laxative's potent effects. Given that history, and my digestive tract, had a tendency to repeat itself, and considering our very public location during our last departure, my anxiety skyrocketed. "There's no place like home," I mused, though my smile wavered at the thought of what awaited us upon our return. With a sense of foreboding, I took Samantha's hand, bracing for the inevitable whoosh back to the present and the gastrointestinal reckoning that would surely follow. And as if on cue, we landed back in our own time. The relief of solid ground beneath our feet was short-lived, however, as Lucifer's laxative chose that precise moment to reassert its devilish influence. I braced for impact, a silent prayer on my lips that perhaps this time, by some miracle, the aftermath would be different. But as the first telltale signs of digestive distress made their presence known, Samantha shot me a look of mixed sympathy and amusement, a grin that said, "Here we go again." Yet before the situation could escalate to its embarrassing crescendo, and just as I was about to sprint for the nearest cover, our surroundings blurred once more. Another whoosh, another unexpected journey through the fabric of time, saving me from immediate humiliation, but plunging us into new uncertainty. The sensation was disorienting, a whirlwind of colors and sensations that spun around us with dizzying speed. As we hurtled through the time portal, I couldn't help but wonder where, or when, we'd end up next. Would it be another tropical paradise, a frozen tundra, or perhaps the middle of an ancient battlefield? The possibilities were as endless as they were unpredictable. But one thought rose above the rest, a silver lining in the chaotic storm of time travel. At least the immediate threat to my dignity had been postponed. "Thank you, time travel, for your oddly timed intervention," I muttered, half joking, half grateful for the reprieve. As we braced for our landing in yet another unknown time and place, I realized that our adventures, for all their trials and tribulations, were a testament to our resilience and our unbreakable bond. Together, we had faced the whims of fate, the challenges of history, and the perils of Lucifer's laxative, emerging each time stronger and more united. So, dear Turdettes, as Samantha and I embark on this next leg of our journey, remember, when life throws you through a loop, or in our case, a series of time portals, it's not about where you land, but who's by your side when you do. True love isn't just about sharing adventures. It's about sticking together through thick, thin, and the occasional digestive apocalypse. Check back soon for the continuation of Charlie and Samantha's barely credible adventures, where history, hilarity, and the quest for clothing optional beaches collide. Yours in laughter, love, and a newfound appreciation for fig leaves. Where do you think we could end up next? Leave it in the comments. Till the next flush, Charlie out. Ah, my fellow time-tossed travelers, welcome back to another exhilarating chapter of Chronicles of a Chronically Displaced Charlie. If you recall, our last episode ended with a cliffhanger that had Samantha and me whirling through the vortex of time, dodging what I like to call a crisis of the pants. Yes, Lucifer's laxative had decided to exact its revenge at precisely the worst moment, just as we touched down in our own time. But as fortune would have it, the universe wasn't quite done with us yet, and off we were swept again before the local wildlife could suffer from the effects of my temporal turmoil. So here we are, about to emerge yet again into the annals of history, fresh from an episode that I would very much like to leave unchronicled. But since we're all about transparency in these time-traveling tales, let's just say that my pants experienced a, shall we say, catastrophic failure? Fortunately for the fabric of time and my dignity, those pants and their cargo won't be accompanying us to our next historical destination. It's just one of the perks of temporal displacement. Leave your baggage behind, literally and figuratively. Now, as Samantha and I brace for our abrupt re-entry into the past, I find myself hoping for a landing spot that prides itself on its scenic views rather than its keen sense of smell. One could argue that frequent time travelers like us should be used to a bit of turbulence, and you'd be right. But let's be honest, there's turbulence, and then there's the after effects of Lucifer's laxative during unscheduled temporal ejection. Not exactly the kind of turbulence you can prepare for with a simple seatbelt. So, as we spin through the time vortex, my thoughts are not on the historical figures we might meet, or the pivotal events we could witness. No, my friends, my current preoccupation is whether our next historical haunt has a liberal view on nudity and public decency. Because let's face it, arriving in the buff is one thing, but arriving in the buff and besmirched, that's a whole new level of historical interaction that I'm not sure I'm ready for. Arriving in the past naked had become an unfortunate hallmark of our time-traveling escapades, but nothing could have prepared Samantha and me for the stark reality of our latest destination, the Spanish Inquisition. Because, of course, where better to land in the buff than the one place in history where even a misplaced mole could see you accused of witchcraft? The irony wasn't lost on us. One minute you're worried about the moral implications of your time-traveling nudity, and the next, you're sprinting through the cobblestone streets of medieval Spain, dodging fervent inquisitors with an overzealous passion for persecuting the scantily clad. Could really use a time traveler's guide to modesty right about now, I panted, as Samantha and I ducked into an alley, narrowly avoiding another group of robe-clad zealots. In our desperate bid for cover and clothing, we stumbled upon a market square, where a particularly flamboyant set of performers were enrapturing an audience with their theatrics. Without missing a beat, Samantha, ever the quick thinker, seized a pair of particularly gaudy costumes from a distracted actor's cart. When in Rome, or rather, Inquisition-era Spain, do as the thespians do, she whispered, throwing me what could only be described as a matador's outfit crossed with a troubadour's wardrobe. Clad in our less than subtle disguises, we resumed our frantic escape, only to encounter a new, gut-twisting twist. Among the very soldiers hot on our heels, my intestinal radar went off. Yes, the unmistakable signal that one of these inquisitorial pursuers was, in fact, a distant relative. Great, I muttered under my breath. Family reunions really have gone downhill. As we zigzagged through back streets, my mind raced for a solution. How do you approach a long-lost ancestor who's currently intent on your capture and possible execution for witchcraft? I didn't recall seeing that chapter in any family history books. Our mad dash for survival led us into a seemingly abandoned building, its doors conveniently ajar. The relief of temporary safety was great, until we realized we weren't alone. There, amidst shadows and dusty relics, stood a figure as iconic as she was unexpected. Morgan Le Fay herself, the architect of my cursed bowels and our time-traveling chaos. "Ah, the prodigal traveler returns," she intoned, her voice echoing slightly in the dimly lit chamber. "And who might this be?" Her gaze shifted to Samantha, who stood, equal parts defiant and bewildered. Before I could muster the appropriate blend of indignation and inquiry, Samantha stepped forward. "Look, Morgan, was it? We've had quite a day. Any chance you could lift this curse and send us back to a time with a little less inquisition?" Morgan's smirk suggested amusement and intrigue, a combination that did nothing to ease my anxiety. "My dear, it seems your journey is only beginning. But fear not, the paths we walk are often woven with the threads of our own making." As cryptic as ever, Morgan's words hung in the air, a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. There we were, a time-displaced couple in fancy dress, standing before the very sorceress responsible for our predicaments. "So, about those threads," I ventured, hoping to steer the conversation toward something resembling answers. "Any chance they lead to a time with less nudity and public accusations?" The sorceress's laughter echoed as we braced ourselves for whatever came next. In the world of time travel, you learn to expect the unexpected. But really, a family reunion during the Spanish Inquisition? Even for us, this was one for the history books. As we stood in the shadowy presence of Morgan Le Fay, history's conundrum shrouded in a cloak of dark mystery, I decided to seize the moment. Here was a chance to unravel some of the age-old questions that had perplexed scholars for centuries. "So, Morgan," I began, my tone casual as if I were a journalist conducting a laid-back interview rather than a time-displaced tourist in a costume. "Was it true what they say about you and Merlin? Partners in magic, or perhaps something more intimate?" Morgan raised an eyebrow, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth as if amused by my curiosity. "Merlin and I had many adventures, but lovers? The tales do love to weave romance where there is mystery," she mused, her voice a melody that seemed to hold deeper secrets. Encouraged, I pressed on. "And the rumors of you being King Arthur's half-sister, any truth to that? Or just more fanciful storytelling by those who penned the legends?" "Ah, family ties in the tales of Arthur are as tangled as the spells of Avalon," Morgan replied cryptically. Each answer she gave skirted the edges of truth, dancing around the heart of my inquiries like a skilled fencer. Before I could delve deeper, Samantha, who had been a simmering cauldron of restraint up to now, stepped forward, her brow furrowed and her stance confrontational. "Look, Morgan, your little history remix with Charlie here might make for a good story, but it's wreaked havoc on our lives. Not that I didn't enjoy being worshipped on that island," she added, her tone softening slightly as she recalled our recent sun-drenched escapade. Morgan's eyes twinkled with mischief. Or was it malice? "My dear, if you think your travels have been inconvenient, consider my plight. Your Charlie interrupted a very delicate situation with a sweet nun, leading her astray from her spiritual path and into the arms of a common farmer, a relationship I had been cultivating for my own passionate reasons." The revelation hit like a bolt from the blue. Samantha's expression shifted from anger to empathy, her gaze turning to me with a mix of surprise and re-evaluation. "Is that true, Charlie? Your time-hopping broke up what Morgan was setting up. Caught off guard by the sudden shift in alliances, I stammered, "Well, I didn't exactly mean to..." But before I could explain, Samantha had already crossed the invisible line, standing now with Morgan. Both women stared at me, united in their frustration. It was a surreal flip of the script. My girlfriend and the legendary sorceress, bonding over their mutual discontent with my accidental interventions in historical romance. "Morgan, did you put a spell on Samantha? Is that why she's siding with you?" I blurted out, desperate to make sense of the swift change in loyalty. The question seemed to offend them both equally. Samantha scoffed. "Charlie, really? I don't need a spell to see when someone has a point. And Morgan here," she gestured to the sorceress, "has her reasons, just like we have ours." Morgan nodded, her smile thin and knowing. "No spells needed, dear Charlie. Sometimes the truth is enchanting enough." As I stood there, flabbergasted and outnumbered, I realized that navigating the complexities of time travel was nothing compared to understanding the allegiances of women, especially when one was a legendary sorceress and the other, my sun-kissed, newly empowered girlfriend. Now wedged uncomfortably between my newly empowered girlfriend and a sorceress whose historical notoriety was well-earned, the sudden pounding on the door jolted us all. The ominous sound echoed through the room, a stark reminder of our precarious position. It was the Queen's soldiers, their boots thudding against the wooden floor with the determined beat of a death march, hunting for witches. Under any other circumstances, the sound would have chilled me to the bone, but given the current tension between Samantha and Morgan, it was almost a welcome interruption. "Time to go," I exclaimed, more relieved than I probably should have been to escape the glaring stares of the two women. We dashed out the back door, our movements a chaotic scramble to evade the soldiers' grasp. As we wove through the narrow streets of the medieval town, I couldn't help but crack a joke, despite the gravity of our situation. "You know, being chased by my own ancestor. Talk about family issues. Here's hoping he recognizes family resemblance under all this panic." But the humor fell flat, especially when Morgan, ever the bearer of unsettling truths, turned to me with a wry smile. "Charlie, you seem to misunderstand something. I haven't actually interfered with your ancestors' relationship yet. They're still together." She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as a new realization dawned on her. "It seems the curse might have sent you back not just to meddle, but to protect me, to ensure the one who cast it remains safe." This revelation hung heavily between us as we continued our flight through the town. The idea that the curse itself could have intentions, almost a will of its own, was disconcerting enough without the added complication of being hunted by soldiers and scorned by companions. Our desperate escape came to an abrupt halt when, in a cruel twist of fate, Samantha was seized by the very ancestor I needed to reunite with my countless great-grandmother. The irony was as thick as the dungeon walls that now threatened to enclose her. "Hold on, Samantha!" I called out, already racking my brain for a rescue plan. Morgan, however, had other ideas. Her commitment to our cause, or lack thereof, was chillingly clear as she hissed, "Let her burn. It simplifies matters." Her cold indifference to Samantha's fate sent a shiver down my spine. "No way," I shot back, my resolve hardening. "We're not leaving her behind. There has to be another way." There, in the murky twilight of our predicament, I eyed Morgan with the kind of desperation that can only come from a man whose plans are as scrambled as his circumstances. "Morgan, listen," I began, my voice a mix of urgency and persuasion. "You might not like it, but you need us. Without me, and my occasionally cooperative digestive tract, you might be stuck here for good. Help get Samantha out and we'll all go back together. Deal?" Morgan, ever the calculating sorceress, considered this for a moment, her gaze flicking between me and the distant shadows where Samantha was likely being held. With a resigned sigh that suggested her options were as limited as mine, she nodded. "Very well, Charlie. Let's rescue your damsel, and then you owe me a ride out of this medieval mess." Our plan was hatched in the shadows of the dungeon, as hasty as it was harebrained. The dungeons were guarded, naturally, by none other than my distant ancestor, whose current occupation as a witch hunter was inconvenient, to say the least. "He's gotta have a weakness," I muttered, peering towards the dim light of the guard post where my ancestor stood watch. "Love," Morgan whispered, her lips curling into a sly grin. "If there's one thing that can soften the hardest heart, it's love, or a lustful obsession, depending on how I cast it." With that mischievous spark in her eye, Morgan began to weave her magic, her hands drawing arcane symbols in the air, while she muttered incantations that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I watched, fascinated and slightly terrified, as she conjured a spell that was bound to turn the tide in our favor. I think, "Just a little tweak here for extra effect," Morgan added, her voice a conspiratorial whisper as she cast the final part of the spell. As she completed her enchantment, my ancestor suddenly straightened up, his previously surly and vigilant demeanor melting away like ice under a midsummer sun. A goofy, lovesick grin spread across his face, and his eyes glazed over with a dreamy sheen that would have been comical if our situation weren't so dire. He stood up, dropped the keys with a clatter that echoed ominously in the damp dungeon air, and then, with a love-struck sigh that would have made Romeo jealous, he floated off in a daze, presumably to seek the affections of his wife. The transformation was so complete, so sudden, that Morgan and I could only stare after him in stunned silence for a moment. "Well, that worked even better than I expected," Morgan remarked, a note of admiration in her voice as she watched my ancestors retreating back. "Let's grab those keys and get Samantha out of here before he snaps out of it." We hurried to the dungeon door, my heart pounding as we unlocked it and slipped inside. The relief of seeing Samantha safe, albeit a bit rattled, was overwhelming. But as we prepared to make our escape, I couldn't help but wonder about the extra effect Morgan mentioned. "What exactly did you add to that spell?" I asked, my curiosity piqued as we led Samantha out of the dungeon. Morgan's smile was cryptic. "Oh, just a little something to ensure he won't forget this night. Love, Charlie, can be quite the enchantment. And now, with a bit of luck, it'll cover our escape." As I hastened to unshackle Samantha, my thoughts were solely focused on our escape, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Yet, no sooner had I unlocked her chains than Samantha, ever the champion of the underdog, insisted, "Charlie, we have to free the others too." I groaned inwardly, mumbling about how women never seem to grasp the severity and urgency of escaping from a dungeon. "It's always the right thing with you, isn't it?" I sighed, even as I moved to release the remaining prisoners, a ragtag group of women who looked more bewildered than witchy. "There's something about damn genetics and the desire to please women that always makes men end up doing exactly what women want," I grumbled under my breath, though not without a twinge of affection. As I unlocked the last of the shackles, the familiar, ominous rumble of my intestinal time machine began its foreboding symphony. "My ancestor didn't waste any time when he got home," I announced, grimacing as the sensations intensified. "It's happening." At this, Samantha and Morgan exchanged a glance. It was clear we were about to be whisked away once more, but not before Samantha decided it was crucial to give Morgan a quick rundown of our recent time-traveling woes. "So Morgan, just a heads up. Charlie's been preparing for a colonoscopy and took what he now refers to as Lucifer's laxative. We've made 2 jumps before this, and each time we've returned, let's just say, Charlie wasn't exactly near a toilet." I shot Samantha a look that was half grateful and half mortified, but before I could interject, she continued. "In fact, we were on a walk when it all started, so each return has been a bit of a messy situation. This will be number 3. And each time we found ourselves instantly sucked back in time again." Morgan, whose face had contorted into an expression of mild disgust mixed with reluctant fascination, nodded slowly. "I see. That's quite the predicament. I'll see what I can do about that." As the ground beneath us began to shimmer, signaling our imminent departure, Morgan quickly murmured an incantation. "Let's hope this helps somewhat with your condition," she said, her tone suggesting she was as eager to avoid my impending embarrassment as I was. As the ever-looming threat of Lucifer's laxative's disastrous effects dangled over us like the proverbial sword of Damocles, I found myself shooting Samantha and Morgan a look that clearly communicated my frustration. "Even now, you keep me waiting?" The urgency of the situation was dire, but all I managed to say out loud was, "We have to go. I can't hold it any longer." With the practiced haste of seasoned time travelers and the added desperation of a man whose dignity hung by a thread, Samantha grabbed one of my hands while I clutched my stomach with the other. Morgan, her expression an enigmatic mix of mischief and concentration, grasped my upper arm firmly. Then, with a flash of light and a sensation like being pulled through a narrow tube, we were in transit. The familiar whoosh of time travel enveloped us, and I braced myself for what might come next, both the destination and the potentially disastrous effects of Lucifer's laxative. As the familiar pull of the time portal began to whisk us away, Morgan gave me a knowing wink, her grip loosening at the last second. She let go, her form flickering like a candle snuffed by the wind, disappearing into the fabric of time, possibly caught somewhere in between. The sensation of hurtling through the time portal was as disorienting as ever, but this time it was tinged with a sense of loss and uncertainty. Where had Morgan dropped off? What would become of her? These questions spun in my mind, but there was no time to ponder them as Samantha and I landed with a thud back in our own time. Bracing myself for the imminent and now familiar catastrophic release from Lucifer's laxative, I was surprised to find that instead of the feared explosion, all that escaped was a rather anticlimactic fart. The relief was immediate and profound, not just from avoiding a messy situation, but also noticing that my pants felt significantly lighter than before. It seemed that Morgan's last-minute magical intervention might have worked, sparing me the full brunt of the Lucifer's effects. I looked over at Samantha, who was visibly trying to stifle a laugh at the absurdity of our situation. "Well, that was different," I said, my voice a mixture of bewilderment and gratitude. Samantha finally let go of her restrained giggles, her laughter mingling with the evening air, lightening the mood. As Samantha and I strolled back to her place, I mentally shoved the recent, more harrowing memories of our time-traveling mishaps into the deepest recesses of my did-not-happen files. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow that made the ordinary seem a bit more magical, and my spirits were high, possibly buoyed by the lack of, let's just say, historical baggage in my pants. "I'm starving," I declared, suddenly aware of the gnawing hunger that had taken a back seat to the more pressing concerns of survival and intestinal integrity. "I could really go for a peanut butter, banana, and pickled herring sandwich right about now." Samantha shot me a look that was part amusement, part alarm. "Charlie, remember the colonoscopy tomorrow. Maybe stick to something a little less adventurous, like toast?" "But where's the fun in that?" I protested, though the thought of upsetting my delicately balanced digestive system with such a bizarre concoction made even me reconsider for a moment. The rest of the evening was a gentle tug-of-war between my gastronomic daring and Samantha's more grounded approach to pre-colonoscopy cuisine, that being none. She hovered like a health-conscious guardian angel, deftly steering me away from the more dangerous sections of the fridge and replacing my more outlandish snacks with safer alternatives. Water. The next morning arrived all too soon, and Samantha escorted me to the doctor's office. We shared nervous jokes about what the doctor might find. "Maybe a lost time capsule?" I quipped, earning an eye roll and a nervous giggle from Samantha. As I was wheeled into the procedure room, the last thing I remember was jokingly warning the doctor, "Be careful, Doc. Last time someone went exploring in there, they found the ruins of an ancient civilization. Coming out of the anesthesia was like waking up from the weirdest nap ever. My head was foggy, my tongue felt like it had gone on a separate adventure, and words just tumbled out without any filters. Is it over? Did you find any temporal anomalies? I swear last week I time-traveled to a buffet in ancient Rome." Samantha shushed me gently, a blush creeping up her cheeks as a couple of nurses glanced our way, their expressions a mix of amusement and mild concern. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The doctor approached with a smile, likely amused by my earlier ramblings. "Well, Charlie, everything looks normal. No time portals, no ancient relics, just a healthy colon." Relieved and still slightly loopy, I couldn't resist one last quip. "So, no need for any temporal tune-ups then? I guess my time-traveling days are strictly external." Samantha laughed, shaking her head as she played off my comment to the doctor. "Just the anesthesia talking," she assured him, though we exchanged a look that said we knew better. As Samantha and I left the doctor's office with a clean bill of health for my surprisingly cooperative colon, a nagging question tickled the back of my mind. What if the reason the doc found nothing is because Morgan Le Fay decided to lift the curse? Or maybe there wasn't anything to see because all the time anomalies got shy. I mused aloud, half expecting the universe to throw another curveball our way. "Well," Samantha chuckled, "let's just be glad he didn't find a sundial or a Roman coin in there. Though that would have made for a great story at parties." Turning to you, my dear Turdettes, let me assure you, while the colonoscopy saga provided plenty of comedic gold and a few too many personal revelations about the state of my pants, it's genuinely a crucial procedure that everyone should take seriously. Yes, it's a bit weird and a tad uncomfortable. Imagine someone taking a mystical journey through your intestines, but it's absolutely vital for keeping tabs on your health. Think of it as routine maintenance for your very own time machine. And a word to the wise. If you ever find yourself needing to down a bottle of what I lovingly refer to as Lucifer's laxative, don't go for a stroll, unless you fancy turning your walk into a sprint for the nearest restroom. Trust me, the only running commentary you'll want is the doctor saying all is clear, not you narrating a public emergency to startled passers-by. As we head home, I can't help but feel a twinge of apprehension about what awaits. Leaving my cat Pharaoh alone for so long is bound to have consequences. I imagine opening the door to find my living room turned into an ancient Egyptian-themed fortress, with Pharaoh perched atop a pyramid of cushions, disdainfully flicking his tail as he surveys his kingdom. And let's not forget my nemesis, the Phantom Chicken, likely plotting its next move in the ductwork at work. I half expect to find it has staged a coup, setting up a command center complete with maps and tiny tactical gear. The battle for the office thermostat is about to get fierce, my feathered foe. Damn, should have asked Morgan if she was responsible for the demon chicken. So, as we wrap up this chapter of gastrointestinal journeys and time-traveling shenanigans, remember, my Turdettes, keep your friends close, your enemies closer, and your colonoscopy appointments scheduled. Signing off with a healthy dose of humor and a cautious glance over my shoulder for any poultry-led insurgencies, Charlie out. Hey there, my gloriously unhinged Turdettes. It's me, Charlie, your mustache-twirling, time-traveling punching bag of the cosmos, back with another gut-wrenching, and I mean that in the most literal, pants-ruining sense, installment of my Turd Yssey Chronicles. If you're still here after the last few chapters, either you're a saint with a stomach of steel or a masochist who gets off on watching me stumble through history like a naked piñata at a party hosted by fate's cruelest DJ. Let's recap the latest dumpster fire of my life, shall we? Because apparently the universe decided my digestive tract needed a trilogy of terror before I could even catch my breath, or a pair of pants. Picture this. Just days ago, I was a man on the edge, clutching a bottle of what I've dubbed Lucifer's laxative, a colonoscopy prep so diabolical it could have been brewed in Satan's own cauldron. Samantha, my ever-optimistic girlfriend turned time travel junkie, thought it'd be a hoot to watch me chug that unholy potion, promising me a routine checkup, while secretly hoping it'd turbocharge my bowel-based jaunts through history. Spoiler. It did, but not in the way she planned. One minute I'm sipping that gallon of regret, expecting a quiet purge. The next, I'm whooshing through time with Samantha in tow, landing starkers in a tropical paradise where she got worshipped as a blonde goddess, and I got stuck mixing love potions out of fermented coconuts and guilt trips. I thought dodging island romance was the worst of it, until we bounced back to the present, and Lucifer's laxative hit me like a gastrointestinal freight train mid-park stroll. Dignity? Gone. Pants? A distant memory. And just as I braced for a public meltdown, the universe yanked us back into the vortex, sparing the local squirrels from witnessing my shame. Then came the Spanish Inquisition, because why settle for sunburn when you can dodge witch hunters in medieval Spain? There I was, leaf-clad and frantic, running from my own ancestor-turned-inquisitor, only to stumble into Morgan Le Fay herself, the sorceress who cursed my bowels into this time-traveling nightmare. She dropped bombshells like it was casual Friday. Turns out, my meddling with a nun's love life centuries back pissed her off enough to hex my family tree, and Samantha's sudden solidarity with her left me outnumbered and outsnarked. We barely escaped, thanks to Morgan's last-minute spell tweaking Lucifer's laxative into a slightly less explosive farewell fart, only to land back home for my actual colonoscopy. The doc found nada. No time portals, no ancient relics, just a colon so pristine it mocked my suffering. Samantha's still convinced Morgan lifted the curse mid-transit, but I'm not holding my breath. My luck's too rotten for happy endings. Now here I am, sprawled on my couch like a war-torn veteran of the porcelain throne, my Pixar-perfect mustache twitching like it's plotting its own escape. It's Thursday, or maybe Friday. Time's a cruel blur when your guts are a cosmic roulette wheel and your cat's a dictator in waiting. Pharaoh's perched atop a pile of my shredded socks, his deep blue eyes glaring like I owe him back rent on his catnip empire after leaving him behind for 3 chapters of chaos. Samantha's in the kitchen, her food journal now a sacred tome of gastronomic warfare, plotting my next trip like she's the Galileo of gut-based navigation. I'm bruised, battered, and barely recovered from Lucifer's laxative, the gift that kept on giving, turning every return into a pants-destroying disaster until Morgan's magical mercy kick. And yet, here I am, about to dive back into the madness. Why? Because Samantha's got a new sandwich and I'm too dumb or too smitten to say no. Welcome to my life, Turdettes, where every bite's a gamble, every flush a portal, and every day a reminder that I'm the universe's favorite chew toy. Let's set the scene with excruciating detail, shall we? It's a dreary Thursday, or maybe Friday. Who knows, my life's a blur of bowel-induced chaos and cat-induced guilt trips. I'm sprawled across my lumpy thrift store couch, looking like a reject from a Wes Anderson audition tape gone wrong. I'm rocking a mustache that's less rugged adventurer and more, I lost a bet with a toddler wielding a Sharpie and a grudge. It's got that Pixar-level flair. Think Buzz Lightyear's chin fuzz with a side of existential crisis, and it twitches every time I move, like it's mocking me in glorious 3D animation. I'm doom-scrolling YouTube on my cracked phone, hunting for top 10 ways to not die in a duel, because let's face it, my existence has veered into territory where parry, thrust, don't bleed out is less a quirky hobby and more a prerequisite for survival. The screen's blaring some posh guy in a cravat droning on, "Keep your stance wide, don't trip over your own boots." But I'm only half listening. My real focus? Pharaoh, my feline overlord, who's perched atop a teetering pile of my shredded hoodies like he's the king of a post-apocalyptic laundry empire. Pharaoh's deep blue eyes bore into me, radiating contempt so pure it could curdle milk from across the room. His tail flicks with the precision of a metronome set to, "You're a disgrace, human," and I'm convinced he's drafting a manifesto in his head, probably titled The Feline Revolution, How to Overthrow My Useless Owner and Claim the Catnip Throne. He's got this smug little smirk, barely visible under his whiskers, like he knows I'm about to screw up royally and he's already RSVP'd to watch the fallout. "What's your problem, you fuzzy dictator?" I mutter, tossing a sock his way. It lands 3 feet short, and he doesn't even flinch. Just keeps staring, judging, plotting. I'm pretty sure he's got Morgan Le Fay on speed dial, ready to sell me out for a lifetime supply of gourmet tuna and a corner office in hell. Meanwhile, Samantha's in the kitchen, her latest obsession, my time travel food journal, turning her into a culinary Dr. Frankenstein with a spatula and a vendetta against my taste buds and my sanity. She's been poring over my chicken scratch entries like they're the Dead Sea Scrolls of temporal chaos, convinced she can steer my bowel-based jaunts with the perfect recipe. Spoiler alert, she's delusional, but her enthusiasm's so infectious I'd follow her into a volcano if she handed me a lava-proof snack and a smile. "Charlie!" she hollers, emerging from the kitchen with a plate that looks like it crawled out of a dumpster behind a Waffle House during a power outage. "Behold, the Belgian backtrack!" I sit up, squinting at her creation like it's a biohazard warning label come to life. It's a sandwich. 2 Eggo waffles, limp and sagging like they've given up on their dreams, sandwiching a grotesque mashup of chunky peanut butter, diced pickled jalapenos, and a dollop of ranch dressing so ancient it's probably got its own zip code. The whole thing's glistening with a sheen that screams, "Eat me!" and your colon will sue for emotional distress. "Samantha," I say, recoiling so hard I nearly topple off the couch. "What in the name of all that's edible, or even vaguely tolerable, is that? Did Pharaoh cough this up after a catnip bender? Or are you just trying to weaponize breakfast into something that'd make a bioengineer weep?" "It's science, babe," she chirps, her grin so blindingly bright it could power a small nuclear reactor. "I'm betting this masterpiece lands you in Belgium. Think medieval castles, chocolate rivers, waffles that don't taste like despair and regret. Perfect for that mustache. You'll blend right in with the Flemish painters, stroking your lip fuzz while sipping ale with monks. Eat it. Report back." "Samantha," I groan, leaning away as the smell, a rancid cocktail of sour ranch, spicy jalapeno vengeance, and peanut butter's sticky betrayal, assaults my nostrils like a chemical weapon. This looks like something you'd find in a gas station trash can, not a time machine. Are you aiming for Belgium or my untimely demise? Because I'm pretty sure this is how you summon Cthulhu, not a cozy trip to Bruges. What's next? A side of expired mayo to really seal the deal. She shrugs, undeterred, her eyes sparkling with the glee of a mad scientist who's just discovered fire and plans to burn the house down with it. "Science demands sacrifice, my mustache-twirling pioneer. 1 bite, and you'll be dodging knights or munching chocolate with Belgian monks, or at least dodging their pitchforks when they see you naked. If I'm wrong, it's just a weird breakfast story to tell Pharaoh. Either way, I win." "Win?" I snort, clutching my chest like she stabbed me with betrayal. If this works, I'm the one stuck bare-assed in history, probably getting chased by a medieval mob screaming heretic. If it doesn't, I'm the one puking in the sink while you sip coffee and laugh. Where's the victory for me in this dystopian sandwich nightmare? I deserve hazard pay, not a science fair ribbon. But her relentless cheer, and my own idiotic curiosity, wins out as always. I grab the Belgian backtrack, eyeing it like it's about to sprout tentacles and demand my firstborn. 1 bite, and it's a flavor apocalypse. The peanut butter glues my mouth shut like edible cement. The jalapenos stab my tongue like tiny green assassins, and the ranch swoops in with a sour tang that's like licking a gym sock after a marathon. Pharaoh hisses his approval, a faint merow that I'm pretty sure translates to, "You deserve this, peasant." I choke it down, wincing as the unholy trinity slides past my gag reflex like a culinary crime scene. "Well," I mutter, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand, "if this doesn't send me to Belgium, it's definitely sending me to the ER, or at least the confessional. Forgive me, Father, for I have eaten." Samantha claps like a proud mom at a spelling bee, and I slump back on the couch, waiting for the inevitable gurgle to whisk me away. But here's the kicker. Nothing happens. No rumble, no spin, no whoosh. Just me, a mustache and a stomach full of regret, sitting there like a chump while Pharaoh smirks from his laundry throne, probably texting his cat friends about my latest failure. Sam? I call, glancing at her smug face as she sips her coffee like it's a victory lap. Shouldn't I be dodging nights or eating chocolate by now? Your Belgian backtrack's a Belgian bust. My bowels are on strike. She frowns, flipping through the food journal with the intensity of a detective cracking a cold case. Huh. Digestion's a slow burn, I guess. It's gotta hit your system. Give it time. Patience, grasshopper. Patience? I scoff, throwing my hands up so dramatically my mustache wiggles like it's starring in Toy Story 5. I just ate a war crime masquerading as breakfast, and now I'm supposed to twiddle my thumbs while my gut decides if it's Belgium or bust. This is why I'm never letting you near the kitchen again. You're a culinary terrorist. But she's already back to scribbling notes, muttering about lag times and gastric catalysts, while I'm left wondering if I've just poisoned myself for nothing, or if Pharaoh's about to capitalize on my distraction and stage a coup. The hours crawl by, agonizing, uneventful, soul-crushing hours. I pace the apartment like a caged tiger, mustache twitching with every step like it's mocking my predicament. Pharaoh trails me like a furry parole officer, his claws clicking on the hardwood, waiting for his moment to strike. I try to distract myself. Netflix binges, some historical drama that reminds me too much of my own chaos. A half-hearted stab at folding laundry. Pharaoh immediately undoes it, scattering socks like a tornado of spite. Even a doomed stare-down with the fridge, where Samantha's next culinary abomination, sardines and Oreos, I'd bet my life on it, lurks like a ticking time bomb. My stomach's silent, though, a traitorous slacker lounging in the background, biding its time while I stew in existential dread. "Move, you lazy gut," I mutter, poking my belly like it's a snoozing employee I'm trying to fire. "I ate that abomination for a reason. Do your damn job." Pharaoh leaps onto the counter, sniffing the air like he's judging my digestive prowess, or lack thereof. His tail flicks, a subtle, "You're pathetic," human, and I'm half tempted to chuck the rest of the sandwich at him just to see if he'll eat it and spare me the suspense. Lunch rolls around and Samantha's still playing food scientist, now sipping coffee like it's her Nobel Prize fuel, while I nibble on a safe, boring PB&J. No jalapenos, no ranch, just sweet, sweet normalcy. "Any rumbles yet?" she asks, smirking over her mug like she's enjoying my slow descent into madness. "Nope," I grumble, slumping onto a stool with the grace of a deflated balloon. "Your Belgian backtrack's more like a Belgian nap track. I'm bored, bloated, and mustache deep in disappointment. Maybe my bowels were tired. Should I send them a gold watch?" "Give it time," she says, all sage-like, flipping journal pages with the smugness of a professor who knows the answer but won't tell you. "It's marinating in there, building up to something epic. You'll see." "Epic?" I snort, nearly choking on my PB&J. "The only epic thing here is the gas I'm about to unleash. Pharaoh's gonna need a hazmat suit and a restraining order. Your science is a slow-motion car crash, and I'm the dummy in the driver's seat." She laughs, undeterred, while Pharaoh leaps onto my lap, claws digging into my thighs like he's staking his claim, or punishing me for my failure to launch. Dinner looms and still nada. I'm starting to think Samantha's lost her touch. Her food journal's just a fancy chronicle of my suffering, not a time-travel cheat code. I'm mid-bite into another safe sandwich, because I'm not risking her next experiment when it hits. A gurgle so deep and ominous, it's like my intestines are staging a Wagner opera, complete with thunderous bass and a choir of regret. "Oh no," I whisper, dropping the sandwich as my gut roars to life like a beast awakened from a coma. "It's alive. It's alive." Samantha's eyes light up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Here we go. Belgium, baby." I don't wait for her cheerleading. I bolt for the bathroom, legs pumping like I'm racing the Flash on a sugar high. Pharaoh's hot on my heels, claws skittering, meowing a frantic, "Take me with you, you selfish jerk." I slam the door in his face, locking it as he scratches like a rejected groupie at a rock concert, his howls escalating. "Merow! Merow!" into a feline tantrum so loud I'm sure the neighbors think I'm running a cat torture ring. "Stay out, you furry lunatic!" I yell, gripping the sink as the room tilts like a funhouse gone rogue. This is a solo mission. No cats allowed in the time travel VIP list. Pharaoh's protests hit fever pitch. Morowo. A symphony of indignation that could wake the dead. But I've got bigger problems. The walls blur. My mustache quivers with Pixar-level drama. Think Woody's mustache in a windstorm. And whoosh, I'm gone, leaving behind a cat who's probably plotting to sell my soul to Morgan Le Fay, a girlfriend chanting Belgium like it's her victory mantra, and a PB&J that'll never know the joy of being finished. I crash land in a muddy field, butt naked as per the cruel rules of my existence, the air thick with gunpowder, sweat, and the faint whiff of colonial misery. I'm sprawled in the dirt, starkers, regretting every bite of that cursed sandwich as cannonballs scream overhead and muskets pop like popcorn at a midnight movie gone wrong. Welcome to... somewhere, I groan, scrambling to my feet as a redcoat's bayonet glints way too close for comfort. Not Belgium, that's for damn sure. No chocolate rivers or waffle castles here, just mud, muskets, and a distinct lack of pants. Samantha, your aim's so off you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat. I dive behind a gnarled oak, snagging handfuls of soggy leaves to cobble together a makeshift leaf bikini. Mother Nature's worst Etsy listing, itchy, damp, and 0 stars on Yelp. Peeking out, I clock the scene. Minutemen in tricorn hats darting through the trees, redcoats in scarlet coats strutting like they're on a parade float gone rogue, and me, a bare-assed anomaly with a mustache that's judging me harder than Pharaoh's ever dreamed. The American Revolution, I mutter, ducking as a musket ball thuds into the trunk, sending splinters flying. Great. History's most overdramatic family feud, and I'm crashing it like a naked gatecrasher at a T-tax protest. Thanks, Belgian backtrack. Way to miss the mark by a continent, an ocean, and a few hundred years. Samantha's getting a strongly worded note when I get back, assuming I don't get skewered first. My gut kicks in. Ancestral radar, rumbling like a Geiger counter after a triple espresso shot. 2 guys catch my eye across the battlefield, and my stomach screaming bingo, louder than a church raffle on a jackpot night. First up, Minuteman Grandpa, a scruffy patriot I'll call Jedediah, because he's got that call me Jed, and I'll gut you with a rusty spoon vibe. He's reloading his musket, tricorn hat crooked, muttering about that lobsterback swine with a scowl that could sour a barrel of cider. Then there's Redcoat Grandpa, a prim and proper type I'll dub Percival, his powdered wig and haughty sneer scream, I bathe in tea and disdain, and I've got the receipts to prove it. They're my great-great-great whatever granddads, and, plot twist, they're on opposite sides, locked in a vendetta so fierce they're picking each other out of the chaos like snipers at a grudge match with a personal score to settle. Oh, you've got to be shitting me, I groan, clutching my leaf bikini as a volley of gunfire erupts, sending dirt clods raining down like colonial confetti. Not Belgium's chocolate-dusted castles or medieval ale halls, but the Revolutionary War, with my grandpas trying to off each other over some colonial soap opera. Samantha, when I get back, we're burning that food journal, banning you from the kitchen, and sticking to oatmeal for the rest of eternity. I deserve a medal, or at least a pair of pants, for this nonsense. I start with Jedediah, figuring a scruffy rebel's less likely to shoot me on sight than a wigged-up snob with a superiority complex. I stumble over, leaves flapping like a sad autumn clearance sale, and wave like a lunatic on a sugar high. Hey, Jed! Hi there! Family reunion alert! You're my grandpa, like a zillion times removed. Don't shoot the messenger. He spins around, musket raised, and stares at me like I'm a talking skunk who just wandered out of the woods. Who in tarnation are you, you naked madman? He growls, tobacco juice dribbling down his chin like a colonial waterfall of disgust. And what's with that mustache? Looks like a possum's tail got drunk, lost a fight, and decided your face was its last stand. Long story. No pants. Literally, I stammer, ducking as a cannonball explodes nearby, showering us with mud and a faint whiff of regret. Point is, that redcoat you're blasting at, he's family too. You kill him, I vanish. Poof. Erased. Gone. Kaput. So maybe cool it with the headshots, huh? I'd like to keep existing if it's not too much trouble. Jed squints, spits a wad of tobacco that splatters my bare foot. Gross. Sticky. And now I'm rethinking this whole family reunion. And snarls, "That pompous git's no kin of mine. Stole my best cow 10 years back. Betsy, finest milker east of the Charles River. And I'll see him buried 6 feet under afore I forgive that thieving bastard." Before I can wrap my head around cow theft as the cornerstone of my family's dysfunction, like, really? A cow? Percival spots us from across the field. He levels his musket at Jed, ignoring me like I'm just a naked footnote in his war diary, and bellows, "You provincial cur! Betsy was mine by right. Payment for your wretched barn torching my hayfield and costing me a season's worth of profit. I'll have your head, you rebel swine, and I'll mount it on my mantle." "Oh, come on!" I shout, diving between them as musket balls zip past like angry hornets on a rampage. "You're fighting a war over Betsy the bovine? I'm out here risking my frostbitten ass and other delicate bits to save you 2 morons, and you're staging high noon over a cow? I'd unsubscribe from this gene pool if I could find the damn button, or at least trade you both in for ancestors who feud over something sensible, like who gets the last beer." They freeze mid-aim, glaring at each other with the intensity of 2 bulls in a pasture, then turn their scowls on me. Percival adjusts his wig with a huff, his powdered curls bouncing like a colonial trampoline gone rogue. "Who's this bare-arsed fool with the absurd lip fur?" he snaps, his accent so posh I half expect him to demand scones and a spot of tea mid-battle. "Your descendant, you tea-soaked diva," I retort, clutching my leaves as a gust of wind threatens to expose me to the entire militia and half the British Army. "If you don't stop shooting, I'll be a ghost story instead of a grandson. Poof. Gone. No more me to carry on your oh-so-glorious legacy. Truce now, or I'm telling Betsy you're both terrible cow parents who don't deserve her utterly amazing milk." They grumble. Jed spits again, narrowly missing my other foot. Thanks, universe. And Percival mutters something about colonial riffraff under his breath. But my desperation, paired with the mustache's inexplicable Pixar charisma, cracks their stubborn armor. I drag them behind a boulder, dodging stray bullets and colonial curses that sound like Shakespeare's rejects, and launch into a peace talk so drenched in sarcasm it could drown a regiment. "Look, Jed, Percival, I get it. Cow theft is the ultimate sin, worse than tea taxes, bad wigs, or that time I ate gas station shrimp and lived to regret it 6 ways to Sunday. But if you kill each other, I vanish faster than a politician's promises, and then who's left to tell this epic tale of bovine vengeance? Hug it out, or at least fake it till the war's over. I've got a girlfriend back home who'll never let me live this down if I don't come back with a pulse, and I'm not about to give her the satisfaction of being right about my inevitable doom." They agree, mostly because a British cannon volley shakes the ground like a colonial earthquake, sending rocks tumbling and dust choking the air, and survival trumps grudges when your ears are ringing like a church bell on steroids. I spot a woman tending wounded soldiers nearby, bandages flying like she's conducting a chaotic orchestra, scowl blazing like she's about to take on the entire British Army single-handedly, and my gut rumbles again, a triumphant ding-ding-ding of ancestral recognition. Jackpot, Grandma number 2. She's got Jed's grit etched into her weathered face and Percival's flair for dramatic hair, a wild bun defying gravity like it's mocking Newton himself, and I dub her Abigail because she looks like she'd knock sense into both these fools with a skillet and call it a day's work. Now to get these numbskulls to play nice long enough to secure my existence and get me the hell out of this mud-soaked nightmare. Here's where I go full Charlie, concocting a plan so dumb it might just work. A fake duel to settle their cow feud, staged to impress Abigail and lock in my timeline before I'm skewered or court-martialed for indecent exposure. I pitch it to Jed and Percival like a shady car salesman hawking a lemon with a fresh coat of paint. "Listen up, you cow-obsessed clowns," I say, dodging a musket ball that nearly parts my mustache. "We're doing a duel, behind that barn over there, out of the line of fire. You fight, Abigail watches, thinks you're both brave idiots instead of the petty morons you are, and bam, my timeline's safe. I get born someday and you get to keep squabbling over Betsy in the afterlife. Don't screw this up, or I'll haunt you as the naked ghost of Betsy's revenge, rattling my leaf bikini for eternity. They grumble but follow me, Jed muttering about damn fool schemes under his breath, and Percival fussing with his wig like it's his true soulmate, adjusting it with the precision of a man who spent more time in front of a mirror than on a battlefield. We set up behind the barn, a rickety splintered thing that looks like it's one cannonball away from collapsing, out of the main battle's chaos, the air thick with the distant crack of muskets and the occasional scream of some poor bastard who didn't duck fast enough. I lay out the gig with all the authority of a man who's got no pants, and even less of a plan. Jed, you miss Percival. Aim for that tree over there, the gnarly one with the squirrel still pissed at you. Percival, you graze Jed's hat. Make it dramatic. Sell it like you're auditioning for a colonial melodrama. I'll yell commentary to keep Abigail hooked and convince her you're not just two idiots with a cow fetish. Go! The duel's a farce from the jump, a slapstick disaster that'd make the Three Stooges proud. Jed fires first, his musket belching smoke like a colonial vape pen gone haywire, and the ball sails so wide it clips the squirrel again. Poor bastard screeches like it's filing a formal complaint with the Continental Congress. Percival yelps, clutching his wig like it's his last line of defense, and I shout, Jedediah with the misfire of the century! That squirrel's hiring a lawyer, and Percival's still standing. Barely! Percival fires back, aiming for Jed's hat, but hitting a rusty bucket instead, sending it spinning across the mud like a breakdance prop on a bender. Percival counters with a wig flourish and a bucket assassination, I bellow, waving my arms like a deranged ringmaster. History hangs in the balance, folks. Will these cow-obsessed clowns kill each other, or will I get to live long enough to yell at Samantha for this? Abigail, who's been stitching up a groaning patriot nearby, her hands moving with the speed of a battlefield surgeon and the ferocity of a woman who's had it up to here with men's nonsense, finally stomps over, her bun wobbling like a furious Jenga tower teetering on the edge of collapse. What in the blazes are you two fools doing? She snaps, grabbing their ears like they're naughty toddlers caught stealing pies from her windowsill. There's a war on you, daft bastards, and you're out here shooting buckets and squirrels like it's a damn county fair. Quit acting like fools before you get us all killed, or worse, before I tan your hides myself. That's when it happens. Her belly glows, a cosmic neon sign screaming mission accomplished in all its radiant glory. Jed and Percival, chastened and oddly smitten by her skillet-wielding aura, exchange sheepish looks like schoolboys caught passing notes. Truce? Jed mumbles, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt with a defeated plop. For now, Percival sniffs, adjusting his wig with a newfound humility that's almost comical given the powdered curls still clinging to his dignity. Abigail rolls her eyes so hard I'm surprised they don't pop out, muttering, "Menfolk, damn fools, every last one of ye." And my job's done. My bowels roar to life, a rumble so loud it drowns out the distant cannon fire and the squirrel's ongoing tantrum, signaling it's time to bounce. I duck behind the barn, leaves still clinging to my dignity like soggy post-it notes on their last gasp, and brace for the whoosh that'll yank me out of this colonial hellscape. I crash back onto my porcelain throne with a thud that rattles the bathroom tiles, shaking the sink and sending a toothbrush clattering to the floor. My mustache is intact, still twitching with Pixar-level smugness, like it knows it's the real MVP of this fiasco, and I'm panting like I've just run a marathon naked through a war zone, which, to be fair, I basically have. Pharaoh's still clawing at the door, meowing a tirade. Moreau! Moreau! That's probably a feline lawsuit for abandonment, emotional distress, and failure to include him in the VIP time travel club. His scratches sound like he's trying to tunnel through with his bare paws, and I can practically hear his inner monologue. You left me behind again, you ungrateful peasant. I'll shred your entire wardrobe and pee in your shoes for this. I wash my hands, splashing water on my face to rinse off the colonial grime. Mud, sweat, and a faint whiff of tobacco spit, and grin at my Pixar stash in the mirror. It's got a smug little wiggle now, like it's auditioning for Toy Story 6. Mustache mayhem, and I can't help but admire its resilience. "You're the real hero here, buddy," I mutter, giving it a salute. Samantha's voice drifts through the door, chipper and oblivious to the chaos I've just endured. "So, Belgium? Did you get chocolate or waffles? Tell me everything." I fling the door open. Pharaoh darts in, hissing like a furry tornado, and leaps onto the sink to glare at me up close, and step out to face her triumphant smirk, her coffee mug poised like a trophy. "Revolutionary War," I say, collapsing onto the couch with a groan as Pharaoh leaps up to reclaim his throne on my chest, claws digging in like a passive-aggressive victory lap. "Saved my grandpas from killing each other over a cow named Betsy. Yes, a cow. Nearly got skewered by redcoats, lost my leaf bikini to a gust of wind, and narrated a duel so bad it'd make Hamilton weep into his quill. Your Belgian backtrack took a hard left into America, missed the chocolate rivers by a few centuries, and dumped me in a mud pit with no pants. Nice try, though. Really nailed the epic part, just not the destination." She laughs, clapping so hard her coffee sloshes, her eyes sparkling with delight. "Close enough. Digestion's tricky. Took its sweet time, huh? Next round I'll tweak it. Sardines and Oreo crumbs, maybe. Vikings and moose could be fun." "God save me," I mutter, sinking deeper into the couch as Pharaoh kneads my chest like he's punishing me for leaving him behind. "If I survive your next recipe, I deserve pants that time travel with me, or at least a therapist who specializes in colonial PTSD and cat-related trauma." Samantha winks, already scribbling in the food journal with the fervor of a mad alchemist. "Deal. That mustache and I are a team. You're stuck with us, cowboy. And hey, Pharaoh's just jealous he didn't get to chase Betsy." I groan, but she's right. My life's a circus. She's the ringmaster cracking the whip of culinary chaos, and Pharaoh's the grumpy lion waiting to eat me alive. Stay tuned, turdettes. This mustache, my bowels, and Samantha's mad science are far from done. Next stop? Who knows? Probably somewhere with Vikings, moose, and a distinct lack of dignity, if her track record's any indication.